Hello, everybody. Welcome back. We are continuing our commentary on Kamryn's games from the National Open this weekend. And this is the start of round 3. As you can see, Kamryn's game has already started, but our board, the moves from the board are delayed a bit. So while we wait for that to be active and we can get the moves from this round's games in real time, we're going to do a little recap on how Kamryn has been doing the first 2 rounds. So we'll do a quick review of those 2 games, and then hopefully the moves will be ready and we can jump right in. Okay. Yeah, they have started. Looks like Kamryn is playing her London system, her favorite opening, as white. So while they get through the opening, we'll go over the games from our first 2 rounds. Just a little quick recap. Okey-dokey. In fact, before we do that, let me just check and make sure we don't already have round 5 available. Okay, we might soon. Okay, round 1 was last night, another late game. Kamryn was white against Mike Owen. And, I mean, it was a great game. It was a very positional game, with Kamryn outplaying him from start to finish. The game started also with a London system, but Black played a Dutch defense, sort of a weird move order with, well, knight f6 was normal, but then to also play g6 combined with e6 was pretty unusual. So it ended up transposing from what was looking like just a pretty standard Dutch defense, like a Dutch stonewall, to a Leningrad Dutch. c4, bishop g7. Normally the bishop goes to d3 in this opening for white, but against this pawn structure, and because of potential e5 pawn pushes, the bishop's much safer on e2, where it can do more, potentially in the future. So, castled, white castled. Everything was pretty standard to here. Black had some serious intentions of pushing in the center. When black does eventually play e5, h3 is an important move. So that way, there's a retreating square for the bishop. This bishop ended up being the key piece throughout the game, exerting pressure on this diagonal. And as soon as the queen moved away from d8 and landed on e7, that c7 pawn was always a weakness. I talked throughout the broadcast about how white, showing different ways that white should be going after this pawn, and indeed it did become a big problem for black. Okay, e5. This we were expecting. Some trades happened. Black's position looks very nice with the 2 pawns in the center, but the big problem that they had in this position was that the bishop was hard to develop. You can't go here because you lose this pawn. Meanwhile, Kamryn's position is very solid. No weaknesses. Pretty straightforward plans of bringing the rooks to the center. Maybe a timely knight d5 or knight b5. Black played b6. This was the first real inaccuracy of the game for black, because it might be nice to have the bishop on this diagonal. That is true. But Kamryn, this was the move of the game. For me, this was the move of the game. It showed great understanding. She jumped out to f3 first. Okay. And although black has to play this e4 move, forcing white to lose a tempo and gaining more space for black, it came with the serious drawback of opening up this bishop, which was really the key to everything that happened next. Yeah. Meanwhile, they're still in the opening. This is we're watching on the camera view the start of round 3, and as soon as I have the moves from the relay, I will switch to that. Let me just check very quickly to see if that is going yet. Looks like not quite yet. Usually it takes about 15 minutes or so. That does show up. I'm just going to refresh and check one more time. Okay, so we'll keep going with Kamryn's round 1 game. Like I said, this was a very nice game. From here, it was white all the way. Bishop b7. Now the bishop was misplaced behind its pawn. Kamryn grabbed the open file. Bit of a mystery move. But black was already having a hard time figuring out what to do. Yeah, knight d5. And this move changed the whole structure of the game. It forces exchanges and the opening of the c-file, giving white a second way to attack this pawn. Very much on the defensive for black. Now, in this position, it actually is a big problem. Black's already losing a pawn. Too many weaknesses on the queen side. Kamryn grabbed the pawn. Then she played some very solid, very just safe chess, taking no risks. Backing up the bishop. By the way, this move, retreating the bishop, maybe was a bit unnecessary. The knight is actually a very useful piece for black. Blockades this bishop and can sort of sit on the dark squares and prevent white from ever pushing this pawn if they want to. So this bishop is not very good because it's just stuck behind the pawns. It actually would have been fine to let black trade this, or at least give them the opportunity to make that mistake. So, b3, bishop b3, not totally necessary, but not bad. Sort of a similar thing here. This rook is black's one of black's most active pieces, and they did all these moves just to exchange it off, and I'm not sure it was even a favorable exchange. I mean, that rook on d1 wasn't really doing anything. It was just guarding the pawn, overprotecting the pawn. After the trade, Kamryn's pieces invaded. Yeah, she was surprised by this move in the game, she said afterwards. It's a very natural move, and black is just saying, you know what, your bishop's too powerful, I'm going to trade it off. Of course, the downside is that for black is that they are still down a pawn. So if they make too many exchanges, then a king and pawn or king and minor piece ending, or even a rook and pawn ending, could very well be losing. Eventually, it did simplify down. Yeah, this was one of the 2 mistakes Kamryn made in this game. It's actually true that she would like to trade queens, but she shouldn't do it in a way that compromises her structure, which is the only issue with this move. After queen takes queen, pawn takes. This didn't happen, but had it happened, we had been talking about some ideas of creating a passed pawn on the queen side, but that no longer exists. and the rook no longer has access to this weakness on c7. So she got a little lucky. She bluffed her opponent, you could say. And the advantage went right back into her favor. They did end up trading queens, but this time she can capture back with the rook, and it's a much more favorable version from before. Yeah, it turned out to be not quite so easy to make progress here. The knight is a good blockader. The bishop's a little bit trapped in. And once again, a very nice move, reminiscent of her bishop f3 to provoke e4 earlier. Bishop a4 provokes b5. And once again, she loses a tempo, but the pawns become a little bit separated, and particularly the pawn on b5 is now a new weakness that black has to contend with. a3, yeah, very calm, patient chess from Kamryn in this game. She definitely excelled in this positional style from what I've seen so far. And when she had the opportunity, she simplified. This endgame is pretty straightforward. Eventually, white can try to make progress with their extra pawn. It is an outside pass pawn. Took a little time. Kamryn played accurately. She brought her king in. Little maneuvering here. In exchange, she holds on to her extra pawn. It's a critical pawn. It's a winning position. Seemed like she was cruising to victory, a pretty easy victory, until this one moment in the game, the final mistake from Kamryn, the second mistake that she made in this game. A little bit too hasty with this pawn. The correct idea is to march the king with the pawn, and getting too far away, too eager to promote. She rushed a little bit perhaps, or didn't anticipate what black could do. Black immediately on the camera played rook b8 and blundered right back, missing the opportunity. The best move, rook b6, would have won the pawn, because after a7, rook a6. But black missed that move, fortunately. I almost had a heart attack on a stream. Because it had been such a beautiful game for it to be ruined by one inaccuracy right at the very end. Oh, it would have been such a shame. But fortunately for Kamryn, black did not play the most accurate move, and it became a very simple win. Black resigned in this position because there's no way to stop an eventual king b7. King c8 is met by rook c2, driving the king away, and then king b7. And it's a very easy win from there. Okay. They have made quite a few moves at this point. Doesn't look like there have been any trades, so just a massive buildup in the center. And let me see if we have the games. Hold on, the moves. Give me 1 second. Bear with me. Not there. It's like we don't quite yet have it. Let's see. Hopefully it should pop up soon. Here. No, okay. So let's see. Looking at the cam view, doesn't look like we have any action yet. So I'm going to dive very quickly into her round 2 game, and then we'll get caught up with this one. Yeah, black is playing an interesting variation, so we'll definitely want to chat about the opening a little bit once we get the moves and see the exact order of how everything was played. Okay, let me get. Yes, so round two, Kamryn was black. She played her favorite French defense. Something a little odd happened in the opening. White White played not the most common moves, I guess you could say. Yeah, bishop d3 in this position, not the most common. Much more common is e5 right away. But, okay, bishop d3, c5, c3, pretty rare. Now e5, so sort of like a delayed e5 move. Knight e2 apparently would have transposed into more of a mainline position. I'm not a French expert myself, so I didn't really know exactly what was going on. Knight f3, yeah, queen b6. To me, this all looked pretty normal. Queen e2 was sort of the first very strange move. Usually white would castle here. Usually castle, figure out where to put the queen later. This was unusual, and it's hard to tell if there's really a way to punish it. Kamryn decided to take and win a pawn. Seems reasonable. Now, the problem with, or not the problem, but the danger with these sort of lines where you grab this pawn on d4 is that it's very easy to fall behind in development because you've already made a couple of extra queen moves. You're going to have to make some more as white's developing and threatening that queen. So, knight f3, queen b6. Essentially, that's what happened. Kamryn had a very hard time getting these two pieces out. Should be 7. Some more development. This game was completely different from round one, where her opponent, I mean, this game was just her opponent got a huge attack, and there were tactics all over the place. First game was very positional, maneuvering style game. This one, complete opposite. So, very soon there were fireworks. Still, Kamryn was struggling to get these pieces out. She played a very risky move, f6, trying to break in the center. A normal move to try to play, but unfortunately bad timing in this particular situation. So rook c7. Yeah, it's a powerful rook. Takes. There now the next bit was extremely complicated. Kamryn's opponent was moving extremely fast, and apparently white should have taken with the knight. Not an easy choice considering that the bishop is in danger, but white would have regained the piece right away with knight takes d7. Although there wasn't a better move. Perhaps knight g6. No, there's something even better. What was the move here? Rook takes c8. Yeah, there's also this move. On top of everything else, because the rook moves away. That bishop is no longer protected. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Just going to wrap up this game. Quick review of her round 2 game from earlier today, and then we're going to be jumping in. Hopefully, we'll have the broadcasted moves up and running. That is also on a little bit of a delay. Kamryn won her round 1 game and lost in round 2. This was her loss. It was a very wild game, very exciting. In this position, there were a series of only moves, starting with bishop d6, And then white's best move, rook takes g7. Sacrifice to open up black's king. Turned out, what's going on here? Turned out that white does not actually have a mate as long as king f6 is played, and the best white can do is perpetual check. Ignore the bar. It doesn't know what it's saying. My bar is broken. It's suggesting moves that aren't even playable in this position. I don't know what's going on with it. Okay. Instead of perpetual, white went for more, a blunder, and this was the last final critical moment of the game for black. She had to play king e7 and run for safety. It looked extremely dangerous because after this, there is in fact a checkmate for white after rook takes c8, removing the defender of d7, followed by queen d7. But she could have played king d8, and then after the same idea, not rook takes, but king takes rook, because after check, the king can run to b8, and it's actually safe, and black is ahead in material by a significant amount, and is winning. That did not happen because Kamryn took the ultimate risk and went out with her king. She grabbed the knight. There's still not a forced mate, but the position is now it's in white's control because this king can never find safety. Queen g7 check. On top of that, white gets some material back right away. King d4. Queen f3. We really wanted black to try to play king e4 to mix things up a little bit. It didn't really work if white had sacrificed the rook, but it's a little bit of a difficult move to find, and any other move wouldn't have worked. Instead, she tried king c5, but unfortunately, the king could not find safety. And despite a valiant effort and a very long journey, the king was not able to be saved. Mate is to follow in the next move or two. So that was the start of the tournament for Kamryn. She had her game last night. Very nice positional win. A very wild game in round two that could have gone either way at multiple moments. And now we are in round three. Each game, by the way, Kamryn has been playing against players 100 to 150 points higher rated than her. So she's had some good, tough opponents. Just see if we have the games yet. Hopefully by now we do. Shall see. Looks like not quite yet. Okay, well, while we wait, I can at least try to recreate some of the moves from the camera. I know it started like so. Well, something along these lines. I'm not sure the exact move order, but this is the position she has now in her game, or at least this is how it was shaking out. I believe black played bishop f5 before she was able to get bishop d3 in. That looks to be the case. Ah, yes. I can't quite tell where her light squared bishop is. I have a feeling she has not moved it yet. And we have a position that looks like this. There is a pawn on e6. So probably these two moves have also been played. Okay. Now the thing is, at the moment, it is Black's turn. Problem is the board is very far away, so it's hard to see. One pair of pawns has been exchanged. How in the world? How in the world did that happen? How did we get a pawn exchange in this game? Okay. Well, it's possible that Black took, but I see a piece on c5 still, so not sure about that. Just check one more time to see if we have the games yet. Ah, okay, very soon we will. So we'll check back here for the games as soon as they start to be uploaded. Do we have some here? Ah, maybe we actually have them here. Okay, hold on. Sorry, 1 second. Looks like we do have some games. Yes, here we go. Ah, okay, here we go. We are in business. We have the games. We have the moves. We're in business. Okay, something very strange happened. I see. Very unusual trades for a London system like this. Okay, let's back up quickly, I think, and just see exactly how the move order went. Okay. Okay, I was pretty close. Yeah, we had this. Very common for the queens to face each other like this. Black should probably play the move c4 here. Actually, don't really like queen b3 for this reason, because after c4, okay, so let's see what Kamryn did. Oh, she took on c5. Aha, so she prevented that from happening. I see, yeah. That was wise, because that was probably Black's intention. If White played something like bishop to e2, it would be sort of a normal move. Then c4, and after takes, you might say, well, okay, Black has doubled pawns, but these pawns are actually extremely dangerous for White, because the basic plan is to play b5, b4, some sort of exchange here, weakening the a and the c pawns, and then to bring the other pawn and do the same thing again. So Black gets a huge attack on the queen side that should be better for them. And it's actually often very difficult to defend, if not impossible. So yeah, this is already an advantage for Black, which is why I believe she took on c5 to avoid that scenario. But yeah, the only thing is that you're giving up your center pawn. It's very interesting. I'm not sure I've seen this idea before, and I play the London system myself. I don't think I've seen this idea of taking on c5, bishop takes c5, and then going knight d4. Usually that knight jumps into e5. But it's certainly interesting. I mean, Black can't allow the knight to take the bishop. I don't think this would really make a ton of sense to go here. That would be met by Most likely he takes. Where does this bishop go? It can't go to d6. Because now we trade queens and win a piece. Okay, be very careful. So we'd have to retreat somewhere more passive like e7. But in this position, I will take on b6. Now you have the doubled isolated pawns, but they're a lot slower, and there's no pawn on c4. That's the critical difference. White actually guards this square very nicely. We could even play bishop b5 check now if we want to. Slow down black's castling. But yeah, actually bishop to b5 is a very good move. No castling for black, and we don't even need anything fancy here. I mean, knight f3, trying to play knight e5 is a possibility, but also we could just castle. Yeah. Okay. Knight d4, I'm very curious to see what black is going to do. Yeah, just bishop to g6. This makes sense. This is what happened. And, well, there is a threat. Okay. I'm very curious if d takes c5 was theory. I'm going to check the opening book very quickly. This particular position not reached very much. That's a bit of a surprise, to be honest. I guess it's unusual to have the bishop on f1 still. I have a feeling that Kamryn's very comfortable in this position. She plays the London a lot, and from what I've seen, she's pretty well prepared with her openings. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Let's see what the computer thinks. There are not many games in the database. D takes c5 is the top computer move. Yeah. Okay. She knows what she's doing. She's in a comfortable spot. That's a good sign. And knight d4 is the best move. Okay, so definitely this is preparation. Because in this position, it's very possible to take a more passive approach and play. I mean, first of all, we could trade queens. Could play bishop to e2, castle, and then try to figure out some sort of pawn break like c4. Yeah, but she went knight d4, and after bishop g6, Kamryn is thinking now. Yeah, her opponent looks pretty comfortable, pretty confident as well. So we'll see what she does in this position. Yeah, there's maybe some options. Knight f3 could be one, although I don't love it because it is nice to have something contesting the e4 square. Knight f3 is definitely possible. Trading queens, that can be on the table now, because if black does take with a pawn, that pawn won't be very dangerous marching down the board afterwards, so we can play a3 and just control that square. There's no pawn on c4. The pawn can't even really advance, again, because of this bishop. That's the reason why having that pawn missing from c4 makes this not so lethal anymore. So queen takes queen, black would probably take back with the bishop. We could do this trade. Something like this. And there's still this threat we don't want to forget about. But it might even be possible just to drop the bishop back out of harm's way and let black decide, do they want to play e5 or not? Here it probably loses a pawn. So I guess they can't really do it. Yeah, so bishop g3 is sort of, might look passive or scared maybe even, but it does stop e5. There's always knight h5 moves if black wants to get rid of the bishop, but white is rock solid here. Nothing to worry about. Yeah, this could be the first moment where Kamryn really spends a little bit of time because it's actually there's some choices, and you have to decide: do you want to trade queens and head towards an endgame? If you do want to trade queens, do you want to do it on their terms or your terms? You know, let them take you, or do you take them, or just leave the queens aiming at each other forever? You could put off that decision, perhaps, but there is an immediate threat of e5 that you have to deal with. I think I might just play a simple thing and go bishop g3. Nothing crazy, simple. And then I just want to develop my bishop castle. We don't have a pawn in the center, but it's not the end of the world because it's not the end of the world that black has more pawns in the center because we can play c4 or maybe even e4 later on. If we can get that in, we'll be just fine. So, okay, Kamryn has moved. She played knight to f3. This is a good move. This knight could potentially jump to the center. It stops e5, first of all, but we can maybe use that square. Yeah, so we can use that square for our own knight. It does give up the e4 square, but we didn't really have control of it anyway. Black could very likely jump a knight in there. Doesn't do too much, so maybe that's why Kamryn is justifying this knight f3 move. Knight on e4. Yeah, it's nicely placed in the center, but maybe not threatening anything quite yet. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We will have FIDE Master Nate Solon joining us again tonight. He was my co-commentator last night. Omar Mills, Chess Von Doom, as he is known on Twitter, was here with me earlier for the round 2 game earlier today. And we will be doing commentary, Omar and I, on Saturday and Sunday for the last 4 remaining games that Kamryn will be playing. So 7 rounds total. We're on round 3. Kamryn has 1 out of 2 points. She won her first round. Lost the second in a really wild game, so I highly recommend you going back and checking out our commentary on that game. It's one of the wilder games I've seen in a long time. Okay, black's just castling. Yeah, not too much happening yet. We don't need to force matters with any queen trades. I think just bishop to e2 is what white should play and get ourselves castled. Another move that comes to mind, though, is h3. This is always pretty useful in case black gets any ideas of wanting to trade off for our bishop to play h3. So that way, if knight h5, we can hide back on h2. And then what's this knight doing here? It's going to have to go back. I don't think there's any danger to the king being in the center right now, so I'm inclined to play h3. There's probably plenty of fine moves. Another alternative would be knight e5. Queen takes queen is probably also possible, and bishop to e2. There's a lot of moves here for white. I could see Kamryn spending a little bit of time here to try to decide between which one of these she wants to do. I wouldn't necessarily rush a queen trade. It's surely fine, but then we start to rapidly head towards an endgame, and there just aren't a lot of imbalances. So, if the queens come off right now, if white takes black, we could see. I think the game starts to steer towards a draw, although it's still early. If we see black take white's queen, that's a different story. Because I actually do very much like this pawn structure for white. I know it's doubled pawns, but they're actually pretty strong because we can play this b4 move and start to kick around black's pieces. And we've also opened up our rook to target this pawn. I know it's defended 3 times right now, and I know they can play a6, but it's not quite that simple because, like I said, we can play b4 and maybe even b5, kick both of these pieces away. And a6 might actually, once our pawn gets to here, might actually lead to some favorable trades for white. In fact, if they play a6 either now or later, it might be hard to do it if we can respond with this move. And this pawn is just a horrible weakness. In fact, they lose it right away, perhaps. Yeah. Can we just take it? We can probably just take it with our... Wait a minute, I have to be careful. What I was a little bit nervous about was something like this is actually good for black because I think you're winning a pawn, but all of a sudden you're getting into some trouble. Okay. There's no need to go take this pawn, and there's no need to go into any of this until we've actually castled. So before white goes crazy doing things, I do think we need to finish our development somewhat soon. So again, h3 I like, bishop e2, or castles. I do like to keep this bishop. I really don't want it to get traded off. If h3, there's a question, can black play e5 anyway? I guess the answer is no, but what I was looking at is something along the lines of, yeah, I guess knight takes. Okay, if bishop takes, I was nervous about something like this, where the knight, no, the knight goes back and defends this. Yeah, the tactic I wanted to be careful about was something along these lines, where if now the bishop drops back, we lose this because of the pin. You can take back, but it goes a pawn. Something like this, it's still not so easy, but yeah, there are potentially some tactics in the center coming soon. So that's just another example of why white needs to get castled pretty soon. h3 maybe it's maybe a little bit on the slower side, but again, if I can get away with it, I want to do it because I just really don't want this knight to trade for the bishop. That bishop can be so important aiming through the center. Okay, but Kamryn is thinking. She has not moved yet. We're in this position after black castled. Yeah, she's really taking her time here. Like I said, there's a lot of options. It's not totally clear what the best move is. Seems like there's several possibilities. And the computer picks a move that I wasn't even really thinking about. It wasn't on my radar. Knight takes c6, slightly better than the alternatives. And the point is, if queen takes c6, we get 95 with a tempo. Okay. Little detail that's kind of nice. If pawn takes, then 95 anyway. Okay, so it just wants to play 95. It's really what it is. And have a knight on e5 that can't be traded. Okay. Yeah, it makes sense. Because if she jumps in with knight e5 right now, you'd love to leave it there, but perhaps black can just trade it off. So basically the computer's saying, well, let's trade off these knights then get our knight to e5. Okay, and we do have a move. Kamryn decided to trade queens. Okay. Yeah, this is sort of the variation that could take us very quickly down to an endgame. Perhaps a very long, drawn-out endgame, where it's hard to tell who's even better. Okay, bishop takes. Well, she did play knight takes c6. Yeah, best move. Oh, apparently it was much better to take with the pawn. That's interesting, yeah. Get the double pawns on purpose. It does open up your rook. The pawns are not easily attacked. And now if knight takes, it just actually gives black a very nice long pawn chain. It's an instructive moment. Yeah, it's actually better to get the doubled pawns. Our opponent moved kind of quickly, so I have a feeling he didn't even consider this move. It's not obvious. I probably would have, if I had to make a quick automatic move, taken with the bishop, but yeah, here's the thing. Now I can take this, and there is an isolated pawn in the position for black. And we can bring our knight to e5, which is what Kamryn did, and c5. Okay, so this is very different from what we had been looking at. Kamryn has already moved. She took the bishop. Huh. She took the bishop. Okay, well, this should be an automatic recapture. Yep. Yeah, I don't know about that. I don't know. That knight was so good on e5. She does have the bishop pair. Yeah. So that's good. Yeah, I was kind of content to leave the knight here. I do feel like we can take this when we want to. Just about. And, you know, here's the thing. You shouldn't, and you may have heard this before. I'm sure you probably have. You shouldn't trade unless it helps you in some way. And I just don't quite see how knight takes g6 really helps white beyond the bishop pair, but I'm not even sure that it's really that good. I think we can get the bishop pair whenever we want. This knight is well placed in the center. I think we can just leave it there. How can black even really contest this knight? And in fact, there's some traps. For example, if they want to try to go after the knight and they play something like bishop c7, that would blunder this idea. Discovered attack on the bishop. So this knight is planted on e5. It's not going anywhere. I would have left it there and maybe decided to take the bishop sometime later on, perhaps. Okay, well, we have knight takes g6. And this is where we are. Now Kamryn's thinking the plan is not so obvious here. I mean, black has the space advantage. We have the two bishops. Black has a lead in development, but I don't think it's really worth that much. Just because it's very easy for us to get our light squared bishop out. We have some choices. Bishop d3, bishop e2, maybe even bishop to a6. Just to be a bit annoying, control some squares in black's territory. Bishop a6 is interesting because it stops a5 and might allow us to play a4, a5 ourselves. And this bishop doesn't have a ton of squares. It might have to go, if it has to go back to d8, that would not be good. Yeah, the only thing is that now if we go bishop here, maybe c4 happens, and our bishop's a little bit trapped in behind the pawn chain. It's not ideal. ideal. Okay. So still waiting on a move from Kamryn. Maybe you just keep it simple, go bishop to e2 and castle. There's some possibility that perhaps she doesn't need to castle at all because we are pretty much in an endgame at this point. But I think I prefer black. I just like the space advantage. H3. Okay. Yeah, she wants to maintain her dark squared bishop. That makes a lot of sense because I don't think black is going to be playing for this, but if they wanted to, knight h5 was an option. For example, if we played bishop d3, knight h5, something like this could have happened on the board. And with the opposite color bishops, it's very likely heading towards a draw. Once a file opens up in the rook's trade, it's basically an automatic draw. So if she can keep that bishop on the board, she'll maintain her bishop pair. And avoid a situation where she reaches an opposite color bishop ending. If she's playing for a win in this position, I think it's difficult to play for a win here because I do still prefer black, just because of their space advantage and very solid setup. One thing that I worry about eventually, although it's pretty difficult for black to do now, but this b file leading to this pawn on b2, it's something that white has to keep an eye on. It's another reason for keeping the bishop. You really don't want to let a rook come to b8 and start attacking you on the open file. Okay, and we're waiting to see what black is going to do. He is thinking pretty intently. I do think that there are a lot of possibilities. c4 is always an option. d4 is a very interesting move as well, trying to blast open the center. And of course we could develop the rooks. Rook e8, the idea of e5. Or any sort of rook to c or d supporting one of these pawn moves is a possibility. It's not super easy to know what the best move is. You know, rook c8, black has to be a little bit careful about a move like this. Could run into bishop a6. And then you just have to move over. Don't go here. Get trapped. That would hurt. There's still a few little traps in the position, but it's hard for me to believe that somebody's going to fall for a tactic here anytime soon. Have a move? Let's see. Not yet. Hmm. Yeah, her opponent is seriously thinking. He's very focused. He was relaxing a little bit earlier, but now you got to come up with some moves with a plan. It's not so easy to just develop anymore. You got to have something specific in mind. Thanks everybody for joining us. I know for many of you it's late. It is late for me as well. But we're witnessing some good stuff. The last game especially was super exciting. Unfortunately, it didn't go Kamryn's way, but it was a wild game. Wild game. And we do have a move c4. Yeah, c4 is a very, very committal move. And I feel that black should have held this back, unless it's good. Unless it's like really good right now. There was no rush to make this move. This is going to help Kamryn a little bit, I have a feeling, because the plan becomes, well, maybe it sort of reduces her options. B3 is a possibility in some lines. It certainly is a possibility now, even. Perhaps. No, okay, we have to be a little bit careful. I wanted to go a little crazy and play b4 with the idea of going here. That's way too risky, but the big problem perhaps is knight e4, and this pawn is too weak. Okay, so we can't do this. This is silly. But at some point, I might just want to play b3. What black is doing with c4 is they're trying to make it hard, at least, for white to play b3, and then eventually a rook coming down on this pawn would be a problem, potentially. All right, chat, throw me your questions if you have them. We are on the delay, but if I can, I will get to you. I'll do my best. Yeah, I just don't know. C4 seemed too committal. He could have taken his time and brought the rooks to where he wanted first. Kept Kamryn guessing a little bit, like maybe I'll play c4, maybe I'll play d4. You never really know. It does open up the bishop, but it's just running into more pawns. Okay, still, we gotta find a move here for Kamryn. Bishop e2 seems like the natural thing to do. And the problem that I have is I don't really have a plan for after that, which is a bit of a problem because we can't afford to be too slow here. Black already has an edge with this space advantage. If we're too slow, they're going to just build on that and start attacking us on the queen side. So I do think that time is of the essence for white to do something. b3, for example, b3, let's look at this a little bit more. Pawn takes, we take. We open up our rook, which is nice. These two pawns are a little bit vulnerable, perhaps, but I don't think I'm really afraid of knight e4. Just play c4. And if they take, the bishop can come out. What's the big deal? See, do we have to worry about c5 ideas? Apparently not, but I don't know exactly why. Just bishop to d3. And if check, king e2. Yeah. Knight c3 is kind of risky because I bring the king out to f3, believe it or not, and then the knight on c3 actually doesn't have a ton of moves. This is a computer line now. Okay, there are weak pawns everywhere. Maybe the rooks come in. Go after those pawns. Bishop d6 is a nice move here. I would probably be inclined to trade this. Even though that would give us the opposite color bishop ending that I sort of was warning about earlier. b3 is very hard to protect right now. I don't really want to put a rook passively behind it. I will if it means we keep it, but I think I'd rather go and take this. And there's still some interesting points to this position. So let's say bishop here. Rook has to move. Let's say rook d8 maybe. We takes. I feel like it should be possible to try to go after this pawn. We can put a rook on d, a rook on a5, or maybe double the rooks on the d file, something like bishop here. Or if necessary, we can reroute the bishop to here and attack the pawn this way, which by the way is a pin. So there's definitely some ideas to go after this pawn and win it. One extra pawn in the opposite color bishop ending is absolutely not a guarantee of anything, but I'm also thinking more long-term to the fact that this pawn on f7 is weak. And it's on a light square, so it cannot be protected by this dark squared bishop. So if we do eliminate d5 eventually, and we get a bishop, say, on c4, you can imagine a lot of pressure here. Combine that with a rook on the 7th rank, and white could seriously be much better in a position like that. We are very far away from that, but that would be how you would battle in a situation with opposite color bishops while you still have some other pieces on the board like the rooks. If you can find a weakness that doesn't match the color of their bishop, like f7, and you can pile up on it, theoretically we can attack that with the 2 rooks and the bishop, but they can only use 2 rooks to defend. Their bishop will be pretty ineffective in a situation where it has to try to defend something that's a weakness on a light square, which there are 2 of those for black. At the same time, there's one weakness for white, but it's on a light square, the same light square as our bishop. So you can imagine a situation where this bishop's on c4, it's attacking, it's defending, and it's a beautiful multi-purpose piece. There's a long way to go to get to that. A lot would need to happen, but that might be something to aim for potentially. And by the way, we're we're all the way back here. So what is the correct response to b3 in this position? Knight e4 immediately. Yeah, that is pretty unpleasant. Just ignoring what we're doing. And why can't I take this? Not taking, but bishop a5. Wow. Okay, there's an obvious threat to take. And we gotta start to run. Okay, so this is going to be not so good. Not so good for white. Takes is good. Pawn will fall, and black will have an extra pawn perhaps. Yeah, b3, I want to do it. It probably makes sense to wait a little bit. Okay, technically, the best move is bishop e2, bishop f3. This is not unlike the maneuver that Kamryn made in her first round game. So I do think it's very possible for her to find this. Yeah, and then if maybe we get a rook to e1, we can even try to break in the center with a move like e4. We might need to find some sort of counterplay like this if black starts to attack us on the queen side. So yeah, whatever she does, it does need to be quick. Because like I said, there's definitely going to be some pressure on the queen side coming. This bishop slows down black's plan a little bit because you can't just slide a rook to b8 right away. But in the long run, this pawn on b2 is an issue. I almost just want to castle queenside. This crazy as that might sound. I don't think we can do it now because knight e4 and this pawn is an issue. But yeah, there might be some ideas of castling queenside. In fact, I see that computer in one of the lines is giving that as an option a little bit further down the line. G4 is another possibility for white. And then after a5, bishop g2. Okay, this is really just another way to get the bishop on this diagonal. There is a potential break with e4. Something like a4. What happened? It went away. My castling queenside idea went away. Yeah, well, okay. At first it said we could do this. And even castling queenside in this position is a possibility. A3 would be good to have in, though, before we do this, because I think black in this position could play A3 and try to break everything open. So the timing, not so good here. Yeah, no. Okay. That's the danger of castling queenside in the London system, is that you can get under a huge attack. I almost never do it. I try to avoid castling queenside because, especially if I see black coming in that direction, and you can tell that because they have this pawn chain pointing right to where they want to go. That's where they have more space, so it's easier to attack. If anything, we want to castle kingside. Or maybe if the bishop comes to here and we're not worrying about knight e4, maybe we can even put our king on d2 or c2. That's a possibility. Kamryn moved and she played bishop to e2. That is the best move in the position, yeah. We got to get developed. That's sort of the bottom line. So this move makes a lot of sense. And now it's black's turn to do something. Okay, you played c4, but what do you have? Yeah, I think the plan is to go bishop here, king d2, maybe a rook to e1, and at some point e4. I definitely think white's king might belong on c2. Seems like a very safe square. There's no light squared bishop or queen that can check you. Well, there's no piece that can check you out of that square. And if the center does open up, you're not on the D or the E files where you become a target potentially. I think that is going to be very tempting for Kamryn to castle kingside, and she needs to resist that temptation. There are some weaknesses over here. The best protector for them, at least for now, is the king. So the king should actually come into the center. It's safe. There's not going to be a checkmate attack. There's not going to be any attack on the king. And that's maybe, besides the bishop pair, that's maybe the one other imbalance in the position that white can take advantage of, is the fact that black castled with their king. As we're getting closer and closer into an endgame, that's a disadvantage for black, because they'll need to spend some time to march the king back to the center at some point, and Kamryn may already be in the center by then. It's a little thing, but these little things do add up. Yeah. Okay, but in the meantime, what should black do? Black should make some threats on the queen side, perhaps. I like a move like rook c8, and I like a5. I don't know what makes sense to move first, but there's going to be a lot of pressure on white if this pawn comes to a3, undermining these two guys. And a move like rook c8 might seem kind of weird, because you're like, well, okay, aren't things going to open up in the center? But a move like rook c8 gets rid of any possibility, really, of being able to play b3. It's a move that I was interested in earlier. Didn't really work. It might not work still, but I could imagine at some point white playing this move to try to open the center a little bit, relieve some of the pressure on b2. But having a rook getting opened up like this would really discourage b3 from happening. I think that would be the point. Beyond that, I'm not really sure what black should try to do here. Pawn to e5 is a move they might like to play. So rook e8 could make sense for that reason. We do have a move knight e4. Yeah. I think the knight just doesn't really do very much on e4. It looks pretty. But it actually just feeds right into what Kamryn should want to do, which is bishop to f3, I believe. Okay, maybe, yeah. It's a little trickier than just bishop f3 and take it. Black doesn't have to let you do that, of course. Maybe knight c5. And the knight could try to end up in d3. That would not be good. Okay, I don't think we can allow that, actually. Huh. But the computer didn't like it. Black had an edge until this move. There's something about it that it doesn't like. Can we play f3? That's what I'm thinking at the moment. Seems like f3 is the move. And it might be that the knight just needs to go back to where it was. And provoking f3 did take away our bishop f3 move that I wanted to do, that Kamryn probably was planning on playing. But I think we will get e4 in. I think we're likely going to get this move. And it can even possibly be played immediately. Okay, apparently that might be a risky choice. But the idea is if they take, we can take this pawn. Yeah, this I think is okay for white. We get some damaged pawns, but we open up the position, which is exactly what we need to do when we have the bishop pair. So this, I think, would be a big improvement for white. We also do have a pass pawn. Two weak pawns, but we got a pass pawn, and now we do have two very active bishops. Black will feel the effects of the bishop pair in this situation. Okay, so maybe e4. That's definitely a possibility. Because if black doesn't take on e4, I want to take them here. Give them a weakness somewhere, either on d5 or c4, depending on how they take back. We are in this position. f3 is good. It's really the only move for equality. Other moves will be a slight edge for black. But this knight, we should kick it out of the center. Knight f6. The computer starts to like white after a more patient move. I wanted to play e4 right away. Not that. And king d2. King might find a home on c2. King d2 is actually an important move. If we're not going to play e4 right away, we do need a little extra support on this pawn in case this bishop gets distracted away by a move like knight h5, for example. So yeah, king d2 makes a lot of sense. And in this case, we're not going to play e4, not at least not until we get situated a little bit better, perhaps with both rooks here and the king on c2. Then pushing to e4 can become a possibility once again. That's the pawn break for white in the position, that or b3. So those are the two ideas that white has in this position. Black's ideas, well, it's harder because if we ever play e5, say with a rook supporting it, then d5 can become weak. Some pressure could be added on the queen side if this a pawn marches down, but that actually takes a while. So it may not be really that dangerous if the pawn gets to a4. Maybe white can even just play a3, or even wait for the pawn to get to a3 and then play b3. That's another possibility. So I'm not too worried about a5, a4 ideas. Top move in this position, if we were to reach this in the game, would be rook c8, and then finally my move b3. Yeah, once the king is a little bit closer to the pawns, we can do this. And even though the pawns are both on open files, they're pretty easy to protect. And first of all, it's not so easy. Black can't go rook b8 again because of this bishop. And our king is already guarding this. Pretty nice. If we need to, we can bring the rook. We've opened up this rook. Our bishop's opened up. We can maybe put it on a6 or b5, depending on what black does. This feels good for white all of a sudden. Something like this. But Kamryn has to be willing to play f3. That's really an important move in this moment. It's clearly the best move. But she might not really want to do it because she was likely planning to play bishop f3. And f3 blocks that plan. I think she'll find it. I just have a hunch that she's going to find it. It's not super obvious, but I think she'll do it. She's spending a lot of time on this move. I don't know that there are a lot of alternatives. There's castling. It's a possibility. But I like the king in the center in this position. You add up bishop pair, king in the center that's actually useful and safe. Maybe we can create some weaknesses in black's pawn structure, and before you know it, white has a little edge. Just checking out the camera view, see if we can get any clues on the body languages here. I think Kamryn doesn't give much away. So, last game she said she was, seemed like she was pretty nervous, but, from what she was saying afterwards. But she was stoic the whole way through. Okay, she played an interesting move, bishop to d1. Okay. That was not on my radar. Bishop d1. Okay. Played. I suppose she's trying to bring the bishop to c2. That's really the square I wanted my king on. I wanted my king on that square. So, okay. And you know what? It's probably just the wrong square for the bishop. Yeah, it's probably the wrong square. I like it on e2 because it's aiming at this pawn. It might seem like that pawn was pretty solid and invincible, but in reality, it's tough for black because if white ever does manage to get e4 in, and black needs to trade, a weakness will be created on c4. So I liked having the bishop on e2. Maybe she can go bishop c2 and chase the knight away back somewhere. But then the bishop won't really be doing that much on c2. It'll be running into this pawn on g6. And actually, it won't have a lot of squares because look at all these pawns guard the squares very nicely where that bishop could go. So I don't think it's going to be more active on c2 than it was on e2. The way to kick the knight was f3. I understand the hesitation doing that move because it does look like it weakens the pawn structure, but there's just not enough pieces on the board for black to exploit that, is I think what it comes down to. Very soon, everybody will be joined by FIDE Master Nate Solon, so we'll be able to get his take on what's going on here. Give me one moment while I fiddle with something. Sorry. Oh, we have a move already. Knight c5. Wow. Okay, not the move I was expecting in reply. I guess he wants to go here, but this sort of justifies what Kamryn was doing. The bishop on c2 will shut that down pretty nicely. Yeah, so actually knight c5. I mean, if you told me that black was going to do this move, I'd say, okay, bishop d1 to c2 makes sense. Yeah. No, I don't think that it really makes too much sense for black just because now what do you do with the knight? You can't come to d3, I'm going to take and go king d2 and try to win that pawn. In fact, the bishop pretty much dominates the knight. It's going to have to reroute somewhere else now. So it's really just misplaced on this square. It's a tempting move. It was better to leave it on e4. Time being and do something else. Let's see, what was the best move actually? A g5, that's interesting, yeah. Also likes a5 and rook fd8, just improving the position, grabbing more space, activating the rooks a little bit. If bishop c2 happens, then the knight can go back to f6 perhaps. Okay, knight c5, bishop c2 has been played. And the game is pretty even. Yeah, pretty balanced at this point. You know, white's bishops are good, they're okay. Black's minor pieces, though, aren't really doing very much at the moment. Black has space, but their minor pieces are worse than white's at I feel like at the moment. I mean, yeah, so they probably need to figure out a place to bring the knight. Not so easy to figure that out. Oops, did I screw up the stream? I'm getting ready for Nate, but he's not here yet, so let me go back to this. Sorry. Once he get here, we'll switch. Yeah, it's a bit harder to find like a coherent plan, really for either side, but especially for black, because I'm not sure there really is one. Even the computer is all over the place with different moves that it wants to try, and none of them really seem to fit together super well. So, yeah, for her opponent, it might be pretty difficult to figure out what to do. I'd like to improve both of these pieces. I don't really see a way. The computer likes some pawn pushes, not g5, it likes f5, clamping down on the center. That makes a lot of sense because I do think that white, one idea for white is to play e4 at the right moment. Probably need to have a rook on e1 first. And then a5, which was kind of all over the place. Rook fc8 is a move. But it's all even. It's all even. He's got about a 12-minute time advantage. I think that it's possible for black to play some slightly quicker moves here and maybe try to build on that time advantage. But if he doesn't, if he kind of gets sucked into this, into thinking about what plan he should have here, I'm not sure there's an obvious way to go when really what he should just be doing is some simple improvement moves. See what white does, and then go from there. Kind of waiting for Nate at this point, waiting for Nate because I think a fresh pair of eyes on the position might be useful because I really don't see any plans besides trying for this f3, e4 is possible, getting the king out of the way first, but I don't love d2. Castling queenside, rook e1, and playing some sort of pawn break in the center is really the only idea that I see for white. Maybe it depends a little bit on what black tries to do next, but yeah. It's the only really clear plan that I can see right now. If black never gets a rook to b8, and if black never pushes this a pawn down the board to attack this pawn structure, then white will be able to play e4 in the future. Preparations needed still. And that will create either a weakness on c4, or if we take and takes back, then a weakness on d5. And there's something to play that for there for white. So black can't take their time here. They need to be playing active, good moves. Okay, and we have Nate joining us, so give me one moment to get him in here with me. Bear with me for a second. Hi Nate, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Let me just get us set up here. Here we go. Can you see everything okay?
Yep.
Great. Yeah, welcome back.
Thank you. Did what ended up happening in that game last night?
The game last night, Kamryn did convert it.
Okay.
It's the good
Nice.
news. Yep. It got down to a rook and pawn ending. She had the one outside past a pawn that she just marched up the board. She got a little bit carried away with that and actually blundered into a draw, but her opponent missed it. He just blissed out some move. He could have won the pawn, but then she won anyway. And she had a really crazy game this morning or this afternoon, earlier this afternoon, that unfortunately she lost that game, but it was pretty wild. Omar and I were covering that game, and it's one of the crazier king walks I've ever seen. So it was entertaining stuff.
Cool. My first impression of this position is, I guess it's another London, but I don't
Yeah,
like it as much for white as I liked last night's position that I came into.
yeah, yeah, that's true.
I mean,
Yeah,
the bishop pair is something, but that knight looks pretty good.
I was thinking the knight wasn't so good.
I
Maybe,
guess it
maybe it's
can't
okay.
really jump anywhere without getting taken
Well, you know
by
what?
the
The
bishop.
thing is, a few moves ago, it was actually on e4, and it was probably much better on that square. Yeah, I can back up a little bit just to show you how that happened. Uh, we had this position,
Hmm.
c4, bishop e2. I think the idea is to play bishop f3, and then Kamryn. Okay, in this position, knight e4 came. F3 was apparently the best move. It's pretty logical. Kick the knight back, and then go like king d2, king c2. I've
Okay.
been wanting her to try to go for some pawn break in the center for a while
Hmm.
now. She hasn't had the opportunity yet, but that's what I'm hoping she's building up for. She ended up playing bishop d1, and then the knight went to c5. And my impression was, she obviously wants to go to c2, but now it's like, what's the knight supposed to do from this square?
Yeah. Mm.
Everything's guarded.
Because initially, I was kind of impressed by this pawn chain in the knight, but I don't entirely know what black is supposed to do here. You'd like to put a rook uh on the b file, but obviously right now b8 is covered by the bishop.
Yeah.
That is, you get a lot of free rooks that way if you play the London and Blitz. Everyone always You can kind of, if you play enough Londons, you can sort of time out. Like when you're like, yeah, this is about the part of the game where they've forgotten that I control B8.
Yeah, if maybe you just put the bishop back on h2 and kind of hide it in the corner and
Yeah,
hope they don't
the
notice.
farther away it is.
Yeah.
Although I'm almost, for black, I almost am thinking about something like Rook FC8, Bishop C7. I mean, in principle, I would like to trade one pair of bishops, right? If I'm, to get rid of the bishop pair advantage. And then if I can do that, then I actually can put a rook on the B file.
Yeah. Yeah, the one thing I didn't like about this whole bishop maneuver that Cameron did is that I kind of wanted my king on c2. It's the
Hmm.
one other little advantage that white maybe has is that they haven't castled yet and they can use their king, whereas black's king is a little far away. But we could use this king to guard b2 in case the rook does land on b8.
Hmm.
And right now, yes, we're the bishop is sort of stopping the knight from jumping in anywhere, but it also doesn't really have anything else to do. So
Yeah, maybe I was thinking, white has the bishop pair, white's position is very solid, but I was thinking about what is white actually trying to do? I mean, maybe H4, H5 and some sort of
oh wow,
not that many pieces left on the board to start a
yeah.
kingside attack, but
Yeah, I think an f4 move might or f5 might shut that down at some point, possibly. I really just I'm even thinking about castling queenside getting a rook to e1 and trying to play e4, creating some
Hmm.
sort of weakness in the
Yeah.
center that we can target. But that's sort of the only idea that I really came up with for white. For black, I was also interested in maybe marching this pawn down the board to
Hmm.
maybe it's not even really threatening that much, but it could scare white into doing something kind of risky. Like maybe they play a4 and then they got a really bad backwards pawn on b2,
Yeah.
something like that. So, but yeah, I sort of was sitting here for a little bit, being like, man, I hope Nate comes on because I need some fresh eyes on this one. There's not a lot for either side to do.
It
So,
it is. I do feel like it's the kind of position where the stronger player is can make something happen though, because there's nothing dramatic happening immediately, but it's quite asymmetrical, and if one side starts to drift and the other side finds a good plan, you could start to get some traction.
yeah, right. I might get kind of easy to just think nothing's going on and play a couple wasted moves, and before you know it, your opponent's attacking you somehow.
I'm kind of curious to see that, as a London aficionado, I'm always curious how these openings go.
Okay, we do have a move. Black played a5. Okay. This is kind of tricky to respond to be honest. I feel like we should ignore it for now, but
I was thinking probably you let it get to a4 and then you play a3.
yeah,
And then
just hope that b2 doesn't become a big issue later on.
yeah, but maybe that pawn structure is not so bad.
You know, and you know what? The bishop on c2 will be attacking that pawn, so black will need to keep it protected.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not all negative.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, I mean, in the meantime, I think I like castling here. Possibly f3 even. But it is kind of tricky to come up with other moves. Hmm. Put that down. Well, if Kamryn finds the best move for white, we could see some excitement here in a moment. Yeah, yeah. There's I've been talking about this move for a while now, but I wasn't thinking to play it here in this moment. But yeah, the best move here apparently there's a couple options. Castling is the third best move. H4 is next, but then the best move is B3.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah, so basically, yeah, it makes sense to you sort of address the idea of b4 in advance and keep your
right.
pawn more flexible.
There's definitely no A4 in this position. We're just push. It might even just take on C4 if we get the opportunity. Maybe.
Yeah.
And if black takes, I mean, the pawns look like they could be kind of vulnerable, but actually it's maybe pretty difficult to actually attack them. And there is
Yeah,
pressure
maybe
here.
then rook fc8. I feel like black should be doing fine as well, but
Should be fine. Yeah, I agree. King D2. There's probably not too much for white to worry about either, though. But this does avoid any unpleasant sort of hypothetical situations where, maybe we castle, for example, and this happens, and if you get two rooks piled up on this pawn,
yeah.
you're
Yeah, that
defending that
that
forever.
backward pawn on b2, I don't know if black can exploit it immediately, but it does look a little bit concerning.
In the long run, yeah, I agree. There was something in the opening I wanted to get your opinion on. It was this position. Is it this position? Yeah. What would you play here as white? And put you on the spot.
Uh, I think I would trade on b6 and play bishop b5. I mean, this is like a theoretical position, so I'm sure I've looked at this before. If I remember correctly, after queen takes, a takes b6, bishop b5, um, those b pawns are a little bit awkward. I think white scores well in practice here, although if black plays well, according to the computer, maybe this is not a big deal still. Like, but I think you play a4 and you kind of like it's not exactly easy for white to improve the position either, but like maybe those doubled b pawns are somewhat weak in the long run.
Yeah, it could be hard for black to make much progress here. Yeah. Yeah, this is an interesting line. I didn't really look at this. I've had positions like this before as white, and for some reason, I almost always get into trouble somehow. I don't know what it is about this
What
position,
is
but
the like it is the kind of position where optically those b pawns look weak, but maybe you can't win them and then you sort of struggle to find a plan.
yeah, I feel like the position is okay, but you actually have to resist the urge to actually go after the pawns because they just play knight d7, and then your bishop sort of is weirdly
Yeah,
placed.
just attacking the pawn directly doesn't necessarily do anything.
Yeah. Okay. She played something pretty different that I mean, I've seen similar things. I've seen taking on c5 before, which is what she played. That's how we got this sort of um, pawn structure.
Mhm.
And then she played knight d4. And apparently these are
My
both
sense, like,
top computer moves. Like the number one move. Both of them.
oh, really? I
Yeah.
was gonna say I don't. It doesn't seem like this should. My first thought was that I don't see why this would cause black any problems, but because if black generally if you play d takes c5 and black can just recapture in one move with the bishop. Um, but is so if bishop g6, what's white's idea here?
Well, she played knight f3. There's
Uh-huh.
some potential threats of e5 that she has to
Yeah.
watch out for. So, I think bishop g3 might have been just fine.
Knight b5 is kind of an interesting move. Maybe that just walks into e5 though.
Maybe e5 right away. Yeah, probably black might need to do that. It's kind of funny if you just think you can castle or something. Do you lose your
Yeah,
queen? It looks
that
very
was my
dangerous.
idea.
Yeah,
But I
almost
think I
trapped.
think yeah, I think e5 is a good response to knight b5 though.
Yeah, probably have to go back.
Yeah, so in that case,
Not
yeah,
quite.
knight
Yeah,
b5 is just But so you said dc and knight d4 are the top engine line?
yeah. Apparently, not by a lot.
Yeah,
There are
I
other
wonder.
good moves too, but
Yeah.
so I was curious.
I
Maybe
don't
she's prepared this. I'll have to ask
Yeah, I
her
was
after
gonna
the
say
game.
that makes me think that might be preparation because at least to me those don't look like intuitive. I don't
Right.
think those are the moves I would come up with over the board.
Yeah, I don't think I've even seen the. Maybe I've seen taking on c5 in plenty of positions, but I don't think I've ever seen putting the knight on d4 because it always goes to e5. That's like the more natural spot to be.
Uh,
But yeah, so I thought this was pretty interesting that she came up with this, or maybe she had it planned for a while. I don't know. And then trades. Okay. You know what's funny in this position? The best move is to take with the pawn. Get
oh,
the Yeah,
interesting.
you get those double pawns on purpose, but you
And try
open
to
up
use
your rook and
the A file.
yeah. So pretty interesting. And then the other idea, okay, Cameron's point was that after bishop takes, she wants to take the knight. Maybe weaken that pawn, maybe come in with 95 or something like that. But if you take, I guess if you take back with this pawn, knight takes e6 is less appealing because it just fixes the pawns.
Yeah.
So that was an interesting
Well,
moment,
it's
but
kind of weird logic. It's like
yeah.
giving yourself doubled isolated pawns so that you can fix them. But
Yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting. So anyway, there was a trade. Knight jumped in. I really didn't like this trade that she did. I know it gets the bishop pair, but and it doubles some pawns. But the knight on e5 is, I just felt like it was such a good piece. It's actually pretty hard. I couldn't see an easy way for black to get rid of it. And I felt like we could take the bishop at any point.
yeah, I'm just trying to understand what White's plan is here.
Well, that was, yeah. I mean, I was trying to understand it for either side, and that was sort of my problem here. Like, I don't see how the trade really helps white besides just grabbing the bishop pair. So anyway, she decided to take. That's when c4 happened. None of these moves are like, I feel like none of them are really bad, but some of them struck me as a little bit odd. Like taking on g6 didn't feel super necessary. c4 for black didn't feel super necessary either. I think there's some ideas of playing d4, but now you kind of take that off the table. I felt like there were maybe some more natural moves, like centralizing the rooks, perhaps. But
Yeah, I mean, a lot of pieces have come off the board pretty quickly. So
yeah, it could be a very long game, or it could be like if we get to opposite color bishops, it could be a very short game, I suppose. Let's see if we have any more moves. A5 was played, and B3. Wait, was B3 played? Let me just refresh and be sure. I think she played B3. Oh, where did it go? Yeah, she did. She played B3. That's a pretty gutsy move, I think.
yeah, I like it though. I think it's a good reaction, just like, to keep the flexibility in those pawns rather than to get them locked after like a4. And then I think a4 probably more or less forces a3. I don't think you want to allow that pawn to get to a3.
Yeah, I mean, there could be like a B3 move in that position, I suppose. But then the pawn maybe on A3 is somewhat dangerous. I'm very curious to see how he's going to react to this. I mean, I guess you probably have to take on B3. Is that true? Do you have to take it? It feels like the natural thing to do and get a rook on the C file. We looked at this a little bit earlier already.
I mean, you can't imagine like the bishop pair could end up being worth something in some scenarios here.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think that's why one of these pawn breaks, B3 or E4, or maybe both, make a lot of sense. If white can try to get them in, then we can see the bishop sort of taking over. I could definitely imagine that happening. I mean, it might be possible that black can ignore this for now. Might get like a little game of chicken going on where neither side really wants to take the other.
Yeah,
if
although I I do think if I was black, I would be worried about b takes c4 because if that exchange happens on c4, then white can bring a rook to the b file. All of a sudden, black's formation on the queen side starts to look a little bit loose in that case.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Yeah, I was mainly focused on the idea that the C pawn's not really a weakness. There's not really a I don't see an easy way for white to go after it. But you're right. This rook B1 move looks kind of annoying. Maybe rook d8's a move though. Instead of rook c8, rook d8. Because if takes, then I want to go knight d3.
Mhm.
Bring the rook in after that if they trade. Maybe it's still your move though, rook b1. It's awkward for this bishop, isn't it?
Yeah. I guess a7 is the only safe square, but it's a little weird, and
A little weird, yeah.
can maybe
Rook
even try to
b5.
go after a pawn with bishop c7.
Ah, yeah. Interesting. It gets a little messy. It's a little messy. Knight d3 maybe? Here. But that might just be a pawn. Might be a whole pawn. Is there some sort of like discovery? Ah,
I guess bishop takes e3 is okay.
I was also nervous about. I don't. Maybe I shouldn't have played rook c8 because maybe it makes more sense to keep the rook guarding the knight. But if we do something like this,
Yeah. But I
yeah,
guess even bishop c5 and you get the a2 pawn. So probably going after a5 with the bishop was just
yeah,
a little too much.
this is what I was worried about for white. Yeah, but maybe we try with the rook. What's wrong with this move? It feels like black is living on the edge here. Like you're barely holding on to everything. You can play a4,
Yeah, I
but
mean there's knight d3 check, and the knight's
yeah,
hitting the bishop. So I kind of hmm.
maybe it simplifies after something like this and this.
I mean I, I don't love that being in that pin on the a file as
Yeah,
black.
it doesn't look good, does it? Yeah. It's actually a pretty nasty pin.
Yeah, maybe instead of rook takes c3, you should play like rook a d8 first to try to get out of that.
That's a clever move.
But white's castling is still legal, right?
It
So
yeah, it is. We could castle. It's move 24. We could still do it. Yeah. It might not even be bad just to go out this way if you get checked. I think you might be pretty safe on f3. Black still has to figure out what to do with this bishop. This pawn is potentially weakness. Yeah. Okay. That does seem risky. So maybe the only choice really is to take. I mean, it definitely seems like the most natural move. But he's thinking for a long time here. Yeah, I can confirm c takes b3 is the best move. Something like this and this. This is the position where I think we're very likely to see.
yeah, I was thinking black can force a trade of with knight e4 check, but then is white that you do have a pass c pawn, whereas black just has that majority on the king side is going to be very hard to make a pass pawn with. So this is not like totally safe for, and then even like rook a4. Um, so I feel like this would actually be kind of risky for black.
Yeah, I agree. I just feel like this knight on c5 is super awkward. It's like in the way of the rook. It's not really attacking anything useful. b3 is pretty well protected. And if you want to improve it, I don't see like a very clear path on where you're trying to go with it.
Hmm. What about bishop d8 to f6 and try to target that c3 pawn?
Yeah, that's an interesting idea. Yeah. Does feel dangerous.
Hmm.
Well, if I'm happy with a light squared bishop versus a knight ending, I might just play bishop e5 perhaps. Maybe now knight d7 though.
Knight d7, yeah, it's kind of annoying because you can't play bishop d4 because e5 would actually trap that.
Yeah, and if we go away, then you get bishop f6 in anyway. That's a big problem. This is actually kind of an annoying idea. What do we do about this? Because I feel like I can't really play rook c1. And my idea was, okay, maybe we drop the bishop back, but that allows knight e4. Maybe we can play f3. Go back if we need to. Bar doesn't really approve, but I don't immediately see why. But anyway, I think black's a little bit better in all these positions. Just they're the ones attacking and they have the pressure.
Yeah, it doesn't seem white's bishop pair doesn't seem to be worth anything just yet.
Yeah. Well, we need maybe one more breakthrough, like a somehow a c4 or maybe an e4 move. Maybe e4 is an idea actually.
I mean, in this position, I think black would just take and then
Says
possibly a problematic check on the d file.
yeah. Okay, we do have a move. Rook fd8 was played. Oh, we ignored it. Oh. So the point is, if white takes, black takes, and he's hoping that this rook and knight can somehow invade into white's position. So he's discouraging the trade by playing rook d8. But I mean, those
But
variations we
did
looked
we?
at where the rook goes to b1 and invades seemed very irritating to me for black.
Yeah, I liked b takes c4, d takes c4, rook b1, bishop a7, and then maybe you can just slow down a little bit and take the time to play king e2.
Okay, let's say knight d3. I'd be very
Yeah,
tempted to do this, but
I think I was just gonna um
there's not really
we
a
could just
threat,
go
I
back
guess.
with bishop g3 or yeah, so we looked at some lines with
Maybe
bishop
this is
c7 and generally taking on a5 was usually going to be a bad idea. So maybe just bishop g3.
right. Keeping that bishop on the board is probably quite important, just because you don't want to allow black to contest the b file.
Yeah, I don't know, I just kind of didn't want to allow knight takes f4 and then e takes f4 kind of opens up the bishop's diagonal.
if we're playing for a win, it also takes us into an opposite color bishop ending where the
Oh.
rooks get traded off. It'll be just a dead draw probably. Yeah, just bishop g3. I like that move. And our b file is much more valuable than their d file. They can't invade, but we can. I think it might just come down to that. The knight on d3 looks nice, but it's not really attacking anything. Yeah, this could backfire on black. They're trying to get in on the d file, but they get problems on the b file. um, and just on general principles with the two bishops, I think you absolutely want to try to open up the position. So b3, I think, was a good move. And now I would definitely take on c4. Yeah. Time is
All right, you
about
know what? I
or
am
she
gonna
wrote. Yeah.
jump off here. I just
Okay.
wanted to drop in and say hi, but
Yeah,
I got
sounds
to
good.
I'm kind of struggling on the sleep, so
No problem, Nate. Thanks for
all
thanks
right.
for tuning in and giving your thoughts. Yeah. All
Okay, I'll see you soon.
right, sounds good. Take care. That's the problem with having toddlers. Okay, Rook B1 was played a similar idea. She's preparing it, but it gives black the opportunity to take on B3 now. It's an interesting psychological moment because, Rook D8, black was sort of pinning some hopes on opening this file. But if they were to take, then that idea sort of just goes out the window. But taking is probably the right thing to do. Yes, it is. But then it sort of makes this move look a little bit silly. Like, what's the point if you're not going to open the D file? We could transpose into a similar position to what we were just analyzing if black decides to play a prophylactic move such as this. Takes would be the same position. So this is possible. Kamryn could have forced this had she taken on c4 first and then played rook b1. Guess she's banking on black probably not wanting to take this. It's possible he changes his mind. I think it might be unlikely. Unless he's looking at alternatives and not liking anything. Like now he might start to realize that bishop a7 isn't actually that good. Could be. Could be that he notices it and decides to take on b3. Anything else, and I think white might take control over this game. So it's a pretty important moment, pretty big decision. He's thinking. While he does that, I'm going to take a quick break and be right back. Okay, I go away for 2 seconds and we get a bunch of moves. All right. So let's see. Black did take. That was the right choice. Yeah, I was thinking about it, and maybe Kamryn telegraphed her plans too much with rook b1. So black took to keep it blocked up. But then a4 strikes me as, well, it's an interesting move. It also seems extremely risky. I mean, it almost just loses the pawn because after takes, knight takes, bishop takes, rook takes, we can take the bishop. But at the end, there's rook a1 skewer. That would hurt. So, okay, it looks like maybe a4 is playable. If we, but what is white supposed to do? We can take it once. And suppose we can play king d2. This pawn looks mighty weak. I'm very worried about it. But maybe we're okay because now we are threatening to take the knight and take the bishop. So black doesn't really have time to play something like rook c8. This now would lose a piece, the same idea I showed before, except now there's no rook a1. Yeah, so this would be winning for white. Okay. So it looks risky to go into this. I think it's the right path because black has some awkwardness coordinating their pieces. Bishop to c5. But that's not really where you want the bishop to be because if you want to target this pawn. We can kick this knight back. Suddenly there's no pressure on the pawn. And white's in good shape. Yeah, white's doing just fine here. Bishop d3 would be an important move. Knight c4 is threatened, so bishop d3. Looks like a weak pawn, but at some point I think white will be able to trade it off, and we might be heading just down to a draw pretty quickly. Okay. a4 played. She did take, in fact. Wise choice. And the best move here is to turn it into a temporary pawn sacrifice, at least temporary. Maybe it's a permanent pawn sacrifice, I don't know. But to play bishop a5. If this is the plan that black came up with, it's very, very deep. To play a4, sacrifice the pawn, you get the bishop to an active square, but you have a ton of pressure on this pawn. Knight e4 is coming, rook c8. Okay, maybe not knight e4, but rook c8 for sure, and then the knight can move, and that pawn on c3 will likely fall. That is not what black had in mind because he played knight takes a4. Okay. King d2 is solid. Looks scary, but the potential for a rook to come to c8 is scary, but there's problems with this bishop being attacked and the threat here. By the way, everyone, thank you for joining once again and rooting for Kamryn. She will be, after the game, she will be on the call, on the stream to talk about the game. So if anybody has any questions for her, put them in the chat now because of the delay. If you're asking questions while we're live, we won't actually see them until later. So uh, if you have any questions for her about how the tournament's going or anything specific in the games, I can send them her way once we finish this game. I don't know how long this game is going to go. I feel like it has the potential to fizzle out pretty quickly, or it could turn into a really long struggle. So, depending on what kind of mood the players are in, we'll have to find out. A little bit of pressure on White. As long as she plays King D2, it should be okay. She can actually also castle. That's interesting. This is not a real threat at the moment because of rook takes the bishop. As long as she doesn't get skewered on the back row. So that's why castling is possible. Bishop e5 is apparently also possible. Okay, between these three moves, I think she'll find one. I would probably take castling off the list because it just feels weird when we're simplifying to an endgame to move the king further away from the center. The king should be used in this sort of situation. I don't really anticipate any danger or problems with the king being on d2. So uh, it's almost an automatic move. I really hope she doesn't take it. It's possible to miscalculate this tactic once again if we hallucinate and think we're winning a piece. We are in fact not winning a piece due to the hanging rook on h1. So that's the one little trap she needs to avoid. It's pretty doable. Sure, she sees this. So far, by the way, the accuracy level of both players is almost identical, 93.6 for white and 93.7 for black. For what it's worth. And the game is level. About as level as can be. If the c pawn trades for the d pawn at some point, somehow, maybe white gets c4 in, then I think we're very likely to have a draw. The 4 versus 4 probably doesn't really favor one player or the other. It's hard to see how Kamryn could fight for an advantage here. Part of me wants to play e4. That would be a good argument for castling. Castles. Actually not super easy to figure out what black should do. Maybe like bishop c5 type of move. My idea is to try to play e4. I don't think we can do it now because we have to worry about this pawn. Really don't want to take the knight either. Okay, so let's play bishop here. Anything like this I'm not too worried about. This becomes a weakness for the moment. And black probably doesn't really want to trade. and fix our pawn structure. Now white's position is slightly better, I would say. Slightly better. There's a threat here. The knight is awkward on the side of the board like this. And there's also a weakness here. There's some light squared weaknesses for the pawns that could be an issue. I don't think this will happen. If the bishop does go here, black probably avoids it. And if we can take this pawn, I would like to. There's some risk that this move could be strong. This bishop's running out of squares. We can go here. Or maybe not. Maybe not. Yeah, rook b8. b8 or is it rook d6? I don't know. Maybe rook d6. Really pushing our luck. Bishop c7. Okay, let's go rook here. Okay, somehow we're holding on to this bishop, but we do lose this pawn. This is a little bit far off. The point I was trying to make originally is that castling, I want to get e4 in, do some sort of trade on this square, and then have a passed c-pawn. But it feels very hard to actually accomplish that because our c-pawn might get captured before we ever get to play e4. We do have a move, rook takes b6. What? Oh, she's gone for something complicated that just doesn't work. Why exactly though? It's not obvious. Wow, what an aggressive move. This was not on my radar at all. The point is knight takes rook, bishop c7. So she gets the material back. Or she's trying to come out ahead. But let's say the knight moves. She's probably calculated something like this. This could be okay for white. But there's a lot of moves in this position. Rook a1. Wow, she had to figure out a lot of different scenarios here. So first of all, there's a skewer to the rook. I mean, I think you have to play bishop d1. If you go king e2 takes, you're just down in exchange. So this is no good. Bishop d1. Yeah, it's not super obvious what black can do here. There is a trick. There is a trick that I think she missed. There's also simple moves like rook d7. Apparently, I don't see why rook d7 is okay. Oh, I see now, yes. No, she's just going to have back rank issues. Because after rook d7, bishop takes, rook b7, bishop has to get out of the way, but then there's rook b1. Wait, but even here, there's king a2. Wait, what is the move? Oh, of course. I rushed. Yeah. No, it's actually rook takes d1 first. This is the tactic that she missed. Probably this move order. She may have calculated all the way to here and saw rook b1, she has king e2. But it's actually rook takes bishop first, and then rook takes rook. And it's an exchange for black, and it's not good. Takes b6. Knight takes b6. Bishop c7. This is happening. Kamryn's away from the board. Maybe she thinks she has this figured out. I don't know. It's a power move. Oh no, but it's unfortunate. Yeah, there's tricks on the back rank. Oh no. I'm kind of curious why she went for this. Maybe she thought she was getting two bishops for a rook. Because these pieces are awkwardly placed, and it feels like maybe there's some tactic in the air. I mean, you should definitely consider rook takes b6. I I didn't. It's late. It's late. Um, but it's a tempting move because of the bishop c7 fork. And she may have felt that defending this pawn was a lost cause, but yeah, she just needed to do the simple move king d2, and it's not so easy for black to actually attack this pawn. In fact, they can't even win it because they have to start worrying about threats on these pieces. Oh boy. And the problem is at this point it is not hard for black. I don't think it's very hard to figure this out. I have a feeling he sees what he needs to do already and he's just double checking the lines. He looks confident. The problem is that rook a1 check is not a hard move to see. You have to calculate a little bit after that, but it's the only option here. It's the only option really to play for a win, I think. Or it's at least very tempting. Um, okay, apparently also rook e8 is good, which is a weird move. Why exactly? We take... Ah, yeah, so you can almost go anywhere. You can almost do anything and stumble into this line, because after bishop d1, then there's rook b8. Similar to the line I just showed. Bishop, it gets the tempo on the bishop. Once the bishop takes the knight, b8 becomes available, and not rook b1 right away once the bishop moves. It's this sacrifice that's the killer that he needs to find. That's going to be all she wrote if this happens. Oh, a little shake of the head there. He's not feeling confident. Maybe he doesn't see it. Okay, there's hope. There's hope. He doesn't see it. He's shaking his head. He thinks he's in trouble. It's going to be two bishops for a rook. I mean, I just think that he has to find it. It's not that hard. There's not even really an alternative but to find it. Black's moves are practically forced. That's the tragedy here. But he looks dejected. Yeah, he's shaking his head. Oh my god. The suspense is killing me. What is he going to do? Probably what they're both calculating is some maybe rook a1 to start, right? Bishop here. The rook moves, let's say c8 even. Rook b8, bishop moves out of the way, and rook b1. But this position is okay for white. It's not winning. Even this is not winning. The bishops are awkward. This pin is very annoying. But any king move, and at least white is holding on to her extra material here. Oh, he's moved. Okay. Surely. Okay, rook b8 was played. Oh my goodness. Why not rook a1? Wow. Kamryn's gotten a little bit lucky a few times, and this is probably the luckiest moment of all. It's even, but we were on the edge of defeat just a second ago, so now we're back in the game. Wow, unbelievable. Yeah, he was shaking his head, and I felt like he doesn't see the winning move, the winning sequence. Okay, one, or any rook move, other than rook b8. Rook b8 was the one move that black could have done with this rook, and that doesn't work. Unbelievable. Yeah, rook c8, rook d8, rook e8 or rook f8. Even rook d7 all would have worked. And the thing is, for black, it's a real tragedy because all he had to do was calculate and ask himself, what was the most forcing move? You know, check, most forcing move. Okay, we attack the bishop. Again, most forcing move, we attack the bishop. Bishop goes away. Most forcing move. Not rook b1, but rook takes bishop. If he had just asked himself this, he would have found the winning sequence. Oh, that was extremely fortunate for Kamryn. Okay, so she can take advantage of this and at least get a draw. Position is now even. And I honestly don't know which side I would prefer if you ask me if I'd want to play white or black here. I feel like maybe I still prefer black. The c3 pawn's weak. We can't really win it. That's probably unrealistic at this point. I think Kamryn's just going to put her king on d3. There's no way to win the pawn. You can't gang up on it with the rook and knight. You can put the rook on c8, but you can't go knight a4. And on the flip side, though, it's hard to see what white could do because black's pawn structure is extremely solid, and it actually blocks the bishop from being able to go anywhere. So there's not really an obvious good spot for this bishop to go to. Yeah, it's going to be a slog. Unless they agree to a draw somewhere soon, it could be a really long battle. I could see a situation where things open up a little bit. Maybe e4 is played and these pawns trade somehow, and the bishop gets free. The pawn starts to move. There's some winning ideas for white in lines like that. Okay, we have knight c4 on the board. Both players have about the same amount of time. No time edge, really. Now it's time to get the rook in the game. There's no threat by black. Any rook b2 is met by king d3. So we can play rook a1. We can play rook b2. Either of these moves. If we go rook b1, then we might see a trade of rooks, and further simplifications probably makes it likely to be a draw. Rook a1 activates the rook, but again, there's not really any targets in black's position for white to go after. It's a good thing to get the rook in the game. I think that's the prudent thing to do. But it's just impossible to do much here. In fact, I do believe I'm starting to see some perpetual ideas. Rook b2, for example. If king d3, then knight e5 check. King goes back. We could see something like this happen, perhaps. Although king c1, if white wants to fight on for more, it's possible. Apparently, king d3 was a big mistake. Why my initial king d3 was a mistake. e5, and this is dangerous. But I thought that we could play f3. Oh, there's a tactic. Okay, black has good winning chances here because we already won one pawn and are about to win another one. Okay, so yeah, with that knight on c4, it's actually pretty annoying. There are some tricks. We have rook b1 on the board. Probably a wise choice. That rook coming to b2 is a bit annoying. How does black respond here? Because there's a lot of choices. Rook c8 seems like the most obvious one. But then if Kamryn wants to, she can go bishop d3, maybe even think about just taking the knight, and we'll call it a day. I'll call it a day. What else? Rook takes rook. I don't know if this is actually the end game that black wants. Ideally, black would like rook versus rook. That would be a draw. I don't think that this is a big advantage for black to have the knight versus the bishop. The knight looks good on c4, but it's hard to attack this weakness on c3. There's no breakthroughs with the pawns. If the knight ends up moving away, it can't come back in again. And maybe black even has to be slightly concerned that white's king is more active. Maybe it's even possible to sneak it in. Start using it. I don't know. It's too slow, probably, but it's that's the one advantage white might have in an endgame like this, is the king is more active than black's. Okay, rook b1 has been played, and we're waiting for black to make a move. Okay. There's an issue on the other board next to her. We do not know what's going on. Glad it's happening on her opponent's time. Looks like they're adding time to the clock. So it could be some sort of claim of some sort, an illegal move perhaps. Usually, if that's the case, then you might get 2 minutes added into your time. So it could be adding time. Maybe there's a malfunction with the clock. Who knows? But it's definitely this kind of thing creates a lot of commotion near you. It might not really affect you ultimately, but yeah, Black is trying to think, and it's important. This he has a decision to make and what to do here. Probably he can't really go wrong. It'd be hard to go wrong here. Oh, they're still talking about it. Wow. Thanks again, everybody, for joining us. Wherever you are, whatever time it is, it's a little bit late for me. It's past midnight now, but here we are. It's been a pretty interesting game. Not as exciting as the previous round, but still some very interesting moments. Rook b2 is played. Huh. And that is a blunder. Oh my. Wow, how lucky can Kamryn get? She made a mistake of getting too fancy with that tactic on the queen side earlier. And now Black is getting fancy. And here's the problem. Rook takes b2 is the natural move. Knight takes... Oh, sorry, what? Not rook takes b... Yeah, rook takes b2. Yeah, rook takes b2. Computer, come on. Stop changing your mind on me. Knight takes b2. And bishop to b3. The knight is trapped in a way. Guarded, guarded, guarded. And I don't think it wants to go to c4 either. So now the idea is we bring the king to take the knight. The knight will move back to c4, which we will take very happily. And when the pawn takes, then our king can march around and take it. It's just a matter of, are we fast enough? Wow. If this happens, this has happened so far. Rook takes b2, knight takes b2. Okay. Bishop to b3 is a winning move. e4 is not bad either, but bishop to b3, and suddenly the bishop dominates the knight. Wow, what a turnaround! What a turnaround this would be. It went from a blunder by Kamryn that her opponent missed, a fairly relatively simple combination, to back to even again, and now just 2 moves later, this is a big mistake. This is a big mistake. But Kamryn does need to find bishop b3. I think it's very findable because the knight is awkwardly placed and it could be trapped. I'll show the line in its entirety. Bishop b3. Now we need a move for black. So let's say the king starts to come. King d2. King e7. Yeah. Here. Takes. We're not faster here. I feel like I've been lied to. But white just has the opposition. That's the point. Oh my goodness. Yeah, what's going to happen is now it's basically zugzwang. Okay, so we weren't quite as fast as I was hoping we were going to be, but it's still winning because black has to start moving their pawns, which, by the way, are a little bit in the way of each other. The king can't move. Anytime the king moves over, we come closer to the pawn here or here. We're going to win this pawn. We're just going to win it. Black makes. I mean, we can also just go back and forth like this and let black make a ton of pawn moves, but eventually they're going to run out. And once they run out, the king will move. We'll sneak in closer, and then we're going to win that pawn on the next turn when the king goes somewhere. I mean, it's just basically that's it. Black could resign in this position, essentially. And she has played bishop to b3. This is the winning idea. Yes. Wow, what a turnaround. Okay. It's hard to imagine not getting into that position. Very hard to imagine, even if she's not sure if it's winning. I mean, I feel like it's pretty forced. The king d2, king c2 idea is not hard to find. Not hard to find at all. But, I mean, that's the whole point of bishop to b3. She might not realize yet that the ending is winning, but by the time she gets the king to a4, I think she'll realize that she's winning, if she hasn't already. Like, you stumble into king a4 because, at a minimum, you stumble into it because there's not really anything better. And that'll be it. Wow, what a turnaround. Don't go anywhere, everybody. I was bracing myself for another loss, 2 in a row. Feels like we've had a dramatic swing here, and I'm hoping nothing disastrous happens. It feels unlikely. Don't want to jinx it, though. But right now it feels like things are very under control for white. Man, the whole game, it's been a story of this bishop versus the knight, and who was better. That knight for a while was better. This bishop did a whole zigzag around the board. I don't understand black's rook b2 move here. We just back up for one moment. It just doesn't make any sense. First of all, we can move away, like let's say rook c8. There's not any danger in allowing a move like rook b7, for example. Everything's protected. Who cares? The rook comes in. Rook on c8 is nice because it'll always pressure this pawn. And yeah, and if you're going to go rook b2 and allow a trade of rooks, you might as well just take the rook. Just take it. Leave your knight on a good square. Why even risk it landing on b2? That's such an awkward spot for it. Okay, he's made a move. Bishop to b3, knight c4 right away. That's a worse version, I have a feeling. She should take it. It's the only winning move. She has. Yes, very good. All right. Yes, she knows. I think she knows that she's winning now. Here's a funny route for the king. Dude. Go get that pawn. Now she might be much faster, actually. Yeah. Now white is faster. Now it's even easier to get the pawn. And by the way, if f5, we can just play. Oh, we can actually, yeah, we can just probably we can play a lot of things, but king f4 and come this way and get it. Not even stopping this king. It's unstoppable. Okay, king f3 is slightly a weird move to find because it looks like it's the wrong direction. But it's much faster than going king d2 and all the way around this way, which, by the way, is also winning. Because we'll get that same position with the king here and black and zugzwang with their king on c5. But this is actually the fastest way. I think she finds that move. f4, okay. Why? Why f4? Okay, we really didn't need this move. Does she not realize it's winning? Yeah, there's a weak pawn here. Your king is in the center this whole time. I've been talking about that king being in the center as like a tiny advantage, but now that we're down to a king and pawn ending, it's a huge advantage. Okay, apparently this does not give up the win yet. But I'm a little bit nervous because if you see that you can go take the pawn, why wouldn't you just run over there and get it right away? Why throw in f4? Okay, I'm getting nervous, you guys. Oh no. Uh, it's very possible that both of them are looking at this position and thinking, "Oh, it's just symmetrical, pretty much symmetrical pawn structure. There's no advantage here for anybody." But that is not the case. Okay. This doesn't spoil anything, I don't think. Let's see, if king f8, we can do a similar race. King e7, king here, and we are still in time. But it starts to get to the point where she needs to play this. And if she doesn't, then it could get difficult. Also, e4 is a move. Okay, so there's multiple ways to do this. Go like this. But if she was going to play e4, I don't know why she didn't play it right away. I guess maybe she's stopping e5. Ah, maybe that's what she's up to. Okay, maybe her plan was to play pawn e4, go king here and here. But the problem with this is that black can play e5 and shut it down. Now there's no entry point. So she played f4 first, prevent e5. E4 is coming next, followed by king e3, king d4. Okay, maybe this is the plan that she has in mind. It's making things a little bit more complicated than it needs to be. Okay. If f5 here, e4 anyway. It's a nice move. Still, this is the idea. And if take, we'll just pick this pawn up along the way. Okay. Wow. A little bit more complicated than it needed to be, but still winning. And by the way, I think that black might not have realized the danger. When he went knight c4, he might have just thought, okay, it's just an even trade. But it was really a poor decision because I think black could have put up a much better fight if he at least spent the two tempos to get something going. The king in the center or the pawns pushed down the board. White still needs to make these two moves to force this move, right? So that's two tempos white needs to take, but black made it easier by saving white those two tempos, just going here. And of course white's going to take the knight. Now the c4 pawn is within reach of the king. It's just a matter of getting it there. Wow, f4 was either It's either like a very genius move, trying to get e4 in without allowing e5, or she's missed the plan and maybe she's just thinking it's even. I'm going to go with a genius move. I hope that the plan is to play e4 and king e3. Very easy to underestimate the complexity of these endgames, even when it's just kings and pawns left on the board. It happens all the time. I think black is realizing he's in trouble. He's now using a lot of time. It's the first time that Kamryn's really been ahead on the clock in this game. And let me just take a look at the camera. Yeah, well, he's thinking. But he looks uncomfortable. Problem is, there just really aren't any moves for black. If white plays the right plan, there's no good move. So coming up with something is pretty challenging. There's just not a lot of options left. What an unreal turnaround. Earlier, I thought black for sure was going to win a piece and win the game. And then just 3 moves later, um, he blunders into a losing king and pawn ending. Unreal. Yeah, rook b2 is, well, yeah, the whole rook takes bishop on b6 tactic that Kamryn tried was a little risky. But rook b2 for black in this right before this sequence that traded off the bishop and the knight that got his knight trapped was a very perplexing decision. I just don't understand that move. Kamryn's move I can understand. She got tempted by some tactics. Looks like it might win some material. Maybe it's possible to miss the way that black could have won the piece on the back rank with that skewer tactic. And we do have a move. I think it's f6, if I'm not mistaken. Okay. Black wants to play e5. So if e4, say the king moves somewhere. King e3, I think the idea is to play e5. We're not going to get to take this pawn, but good lord, we're still winning if we go this way instead. Unreal. Yeah, these 2 pawns are very bad against these 2 pawns. We can stick our king right in front of them, and black will be in zugzwang. This is very easy to win. This is very easy to win. King f3, black can come down. What can black do? He can only go back and forth now. If this move, it's zugzwang. We go king h5, and after this, we win material. We're going to take this next move, win a pawn, and march through. Yeah, the double isolated pawns are really bad. So we can actually switch plans on them. Okay, we have moves, so let me catch up. f6, e4, e5 was played. So taking on e5 is very good. Any king move also is working here. Kamryn should take her time and really figure it out, though, because this is actually very simple, but it's not an idea that was obvious at first because I was so focused on going after that c4 pawn. But yeah, we can actually just take this and all the pawns are weak and our king can come in this way. It's very straightforward. They're not going to save this pawn. just can't save it. Black is going to run out of moves and lose this game. Oh, sorry. E5 was played, and we're still waiting for Kamryn to make her move. Yeah. It is not a blockade. If that's what Black is trying to do and create some sort of blockade, that is not what's happening here. You will run out of moves. Do the double pawns, which in hindsight makes that trade on G6 seem brilliant. That was the knight for the bishop earlier in the game that I didn't really want to do. Yeah, the thing is, white can take on e5 right this moment, but we can also take on e5 at any other time that we choose. As long as, I guess the only thing is we could, if we wait too long, maybe not, maybe I exaggerated when I said any other time, but if the king gets to e6, then maybe it's too late. Maybe. Because yeah, it might not even be too late even in that position. I'm just thinking, let's just say we waste some moves, perhaps something like this. Okay, yeah, it is too late, but not with this. Apparently, unbelievable. And if takes, what exactly is going on here? Well, it starts to get really messy now. White is apparently winning, but it's very hard to tell exactly why. H4. Okay, H4, let's say, it's almost Zugzwang again because the king sort of has to move away and we come up. So why not this? King F4. It's Zugzwang again. Look at this. We can break through with the pawns, essentially. And when the king comes back to try to stop whatever remaining pawn we have, then we take this pawn and then we go after the pawn on c4. And we win that way. Okay. But we have to be very careful. There are ways that black could maybe get a fortress set up here. G5 would be a way. Fortress. And we're way too slow to come around this way now because the king is here in plenty of time. So Kamryn just needs to find a couple more accurate moves to avoid some sort of fortress. She played King F3. Okay, it's still good. King F3 is telling me that she's not trying to do something like this. I think she sees the idea of taking on E5 and going King G4. I think she sees this now. He's played King F7. It may be very important to take on E5. I don't know if it's the only move. Apparently F5 also works, but that's it. Takes or takes or wins for white. Oh man. But that's it. Otherwise, apparently black will set up a fortress and that's it. Why is this winning exactly? I assume G5 and maybe our king just sort of starts to weasel in. Oh man. Yeah, look at this. Like black can't really do anything. They're pretty stuck. First of all, if they play G6, we take, and after king takes, we have one tempo that we can use. King has to back up somewhere. After this, king f7, h4. Create a pass pawn. Black will need to come and stop that pawn at some point, and then we gobble up everything else. That's very straightforward. Okay, that's very findable. Very findable. I mean, the king can't move, we take. If pawn takes, we take, and then we go here, maybe. What does black do? Let's say king e7. King e4. King d6. g4, we're going to create a pass pawn, and the king will get distracted back, and once again, we'll win this pawn. That should be winning. That should be winning. We'll probably also be able to get this pawn while we're at it. Kamryn has moved. She took on e5. Yes. Very good. This is the simple way. Black has to take back, so I'm surprised he hasn't moved yet. Now it's hopeless for black. Completely hopeless. Sorry, I'm laughing at the chat. What is black thinking about? Maybe he's realized that he's lost and there's nothing to do. f5 is the only other option I can think of. I mean, any king move we just take and we're up a pawn. And this still has big problems. So, okay, he has moved. He played king e6. Okay, well, we can just take. Pretty straightforward. Win a pawn. Advance the king. Or our pawns. Kamryn's got this, and it's only going to take a couple more moves. She took on e6. Very good. Okay, she's up material officially. And not only that, but she has the better position on top of it. No weak pawns. No weak pawns that black can really actually expect to go after or take. So she takes played. Okay. This position, I don't think requires much precision at all. Any move should be winning. The simplest thing to do is to create a pass pawn, pass h pawn. We have two. We have one. We can play h4, g4, h5. And after pawn takes, we have a runner. But if the king ever goes to stop it, we mob up with our king. It's as simple as that. Yeah, just h4, g4. That's probably the most efficient way, but there's really not much black can do. So any move will get us through at this point. I like that Kamryn's taking her time, though. Work it out. Make sure you have the win. And she has moved. Looks like she played h4, but I'm not sure. King f4, okay. Yeah, very reasonable. So black can kick the king, but we can go anywhere. And then we can just play g3 in the same plan. There's nothing black can do about this. All right, stick around. Kamryn, I'm sure, will want to join us as usual afterwards to talk about the game a little bit, go over some of the moments, the key moments. So if you're still here, might as well stay a little longer and get a chance to see what she thinks about the game. Thank you all for joining us. I know for many of you it's weird hours, but this game was honestly like not much happening from the beginning of the game through the middle game. It was just sort of like this little maneuvering battle, not really clear what was going to happen with the bishop pair was going to be useful or not. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, there's all these tactics where first her opponent is winning, then he throws away the win, only to blunder a couple moves later and get into this endgame. So there was, anybody who left early, you missed the fireworks. I'm gonna have to get after Nate about that. left me here. Missed the best part of the game. Okay, we're still actually at king f4. Black has not moved yet. Okay, now as I say that, he's moved. I think he's played g5. King e3, as predicted. And I mean, the plan here is very, very simple. King e5, but g3 is going to be played. And it's so straightforward. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a resignation at any moment. g4 is even a move, I believe. g4. It's zugzwang. Simple as that. Black king goes back, white gets in and takes this pawn. That's it. g3. Okay. Yeah. Will he play it out? Will we get a resignation? Any moment we could get it. Yeah, he's frustrated. It's tough because he was better. He missed the one tactic. He probably doesn't even realize it yet. If it wasn't for that, though, he never really had a large advantage. It was even the whole game. There were just two moments. Two moments. One where he missed the win. One where he threw away the game. And that was it. It really just one mistake from Kamryn, one mistake from her opponent, and that was all it took. Time is getting low as well. Not that it matters. It's just you can only think for so long here. There's not really anything to do, unfortunately. And he's realizing it. I will say Kamryn played this endgame very, very well. Very well. Yeah. She played the endgame in her first game also pretty well. One little slip, but other than that, it was like perfect moves all the way through. So I don't know what she'd say about that, but just from watching these last couple of games, I feel like end games are definitely a strength of hers. Be interesting to see going into this one, like how winning, when she realized she was winning this game. Was it when she trapped the knight? Was it later on in the pawn ending? Be interesting to see. So we will talk to Kamryn after the game as soon as it finishes. Could be any second now. But we'll see if he wants to play it out a little bit more. Honestly, Rook B2 was a shocking move. I was thinking, oh man, it's just going to be nothing happening. We can go back to that moment if anybody is just joining. The position was basically, I don't want to say dead draw, but there was really nothing happening. If anything, black was better because there's a weak pawn and the knight's on a nice outpost. There's not enough to win for black. Maybe he thought he was winning somehow, but um, yeah, I mean, he could have traded rooks. He could have moved the rook anywhere and been fine. Instead, probably the only move, besides like an outrageous blunder, that loses is rook b2. And after it takes, the problem is the knight is trapped. The only way to get it out is to go to c4, but that allows to trade, and the pawn is too vulnerable. Now, Kamryn could have run over and captured it right away, but the way she handled the pawn ending after this was also just fine. The win was always there for her. She played g3. Her opponent is still thinking, but he won't find anything here. Unfortunately for him, there's just no more tricks. Well, he might decide to blitz out the endgame, but really there's no hope. We'll just have to wait and see. But this is it. Yeah, Kamryn's going to be 2 out of 3. And all of her opponents have been 100 to 150 points higher rated than her. I mean, that is a fantastic start to the tournament. Yeah, really good start. I feel like I can't even jinx it at this point. It's like impossible to jinx it. So I can go ahead and say Kamryn's going to be 2 out of 3 after this round. There's not a way to mess this up at this point. There's no tricks at all. I mean, he's looking, but there's just not anything. Can't move the king. White's king will get in. There are no safe pawn moves. There's just nothing here, unfortunately. Unfortunately for black. There we go. We have the resignation. Kamryn wins. Tough game for Black. He missed the one opportunity to win earlier in the game. Then one slip is all it took. All right, Kamryn, well done. Yes, 2 out of 3. It is official. She has won her game. And we will hear from her soon as they wrap up. Be very curious to see if she realized the moment where he could have won the game. But doesn't matter. We have a victory. We're just collecting the score sheets from the players. Yeah. So it'll take a couple minutes. Kamryn will just needs to get set up in a different room, and we'll hear from her, and then we'll call it a night. Thank you again, everybody, for joining. Hope you've enjoyed watching and the commentary. Probably back this up a little bit, and well, don't know where she's going to want to start, but yeah, we'll leave it here for now. See what she wants to go through from the beginning. That's fine, or we can fast forward to some of those critical moments. Okay, as soon as Kamryn finds a spot, we'll take a look. Give her a minute. Tomorrow, we have 2 games tomorrow that myself and Omar will be commentating on. So we hope you guys will tune in for that. And then also on Sunday. So we have a lot more chess ahead. But day 1, 2 out of 3, or day 1.5 to finish with 2 out of 3 is yeah, very, very good for Kamryn. Nice start. Tomorrow she's going to have a tough game for sure. Okay, as soon as Kamryn finds a spot, we'll chat with her for a few minutes and then we'll call it a night. Get some rest for tomorrow. There's going to be more chess. Yeah, for those that maybe are just joining. Oh, you have Kamryn?
Hi, Ian.
Hi,
Trying to get
Kamryn.
to the room.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah.
It's just, oh my gosh, it's such a long walk.
Congratulations on the win.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was a hard fought game. Very interesting.
Oh my goodness. I'm very curious to see if you.
Oh, you cut out there, Kamryn. That hallway has bad internet. Yeah, if you're just joining, there were two very critical moments that definitely want to take. We'll go back and take a look one more time.
Sorry, almost there.
That's okay.
Most awkward part. Almost there.
Sounds good.
Where am I trying? I don't have to pull my arm up once I get to the.
Are you sure you don't have 5 more masses?
You're still streaming?
I am now.
I was going to ask if you want to get over the game, but I don't know if we're going to do that on stream.
Well, I do have a commentator if you want to join us to
Yeah, sure.
look at some of the key moments.
You're honest about it.
Yeah, do you want to just sit over here maybe? Or I don't know what's a good spot.
Oh, look at
Oh,
this.
yeah.
We're gonna get both players for
Yeah.
the post game
Yeah,
comments. Nice.
Yeah. Thanks for being a good sport.
Yeah, no problem. You've been fair square. As soon as I was like, I thought I could just keep your king out, and then I realized, oh wait a second, no, I just actually trapped my pawn. So
Yeah.
I'm so mad at myself.
I even at that end, yeah, I still wasn't quite sure. And that, yeah, I wasn't sure I'd be able to force the Zoo Swamp, but
I was very confident you'd have the Zeus one because my double pawns.
yeah, it was tricky. And then once I
Okay. Let's see. Can't hear you at the moment, Kamryn. Yeah, apparently this room is very far.
just go in that corner.
Oh, there we go. Got you. Got her back.
He has it on stream, so you can just look at the phone. Okay,
You guys, what's the tripod for?
I'm on stream right now.
Oh, you are?
Yes.
Are you like famous?
Mildly.
Like how many?
I have 25,000 on YouTube.
Hey, I got 25,000 people. So. Wait, what's the name?
Kamryn Heidi. If you just search KAMRYN chess, it'll come up.
Are you participating in the tournament?
Yes. Oh, what did I do?
I'm trying to get some photos for when you chess business, so I saw a tripod. I thought
Oh,
you had a good camera. Is it? Oh, okay.
There you are. Hi, Kamryn.
Hi. Okay, yeah, fair enough.
Hi, Marcel. How are you?
Is the internet okay? It looks kind of laggy.
I can hear you fine. I can see you fine.
Okay.
For some reason, the walls like
Kamryn, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I'll turn you up in just a bit.
Okay.
You hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you a little bit, but there's a lot of background noise, but it's fine.
Okay, yeah. I wish I could plug in my mics, but they don't work on my phone. Yeah. All right. This is my commentator, National Actor Ian Harris.
Oh, good.
Hey, how are you, Marcel?
Could be better, but
Yeah, tough game. Yeah, really tough. But yeah, it was pretty interesting, especially a few different moments. I don't know if you guys want to go through from the beginning or if you want to jump to some of those crucial moments or what you want to do, but
Well, I know it's late for you, so we can do just like the key moments if you want, and then we can just talk about it after.
okay. Yeah, and then you guys can do whatever you want after that. That makes sense. Okay. Yeah, it was actually pretty even all the way through. There wasn't really there wasn't too much going on in the opening that was like strange or weird or complicated, to be honest. But
then you move knight, and I want knight on. Take the pawn. This is where I was out of theory because I was like, I don't think that's a move, but I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, I think we're still in theory at that point. I'm gonna have to check.
oh, you guys, let's see. Yeah, I jumped ahead of you a little bit. Hold on. So you're at
Okay,
what? Bishop
Where are
C5.
you?
Okay. Yeah, this was a pretty interesting line, Kamryn. Was this something you knew that you had prepared, the taking on C5 and then knight D4?
Yeah, I think it's in my theory. I like calculated it just to make sure because the move order was coming, but yeah, I think it's something I've studied. That idea is like pretty common when they bring the bishop out early, or not early, but like before moving the pawn to like try and get the bishop pair.
Okay, yeah, it was an interesting idea. I don't think I've really seen this before. So
Was it good?
yeah, it turned out to be top computer moves. Take on C5 and then knight D4. Yeah, it was good. Yeah, it was good. But I mean, the position is pretty even.
Yeah, I think the idea is just to like get kind of a weird
Knight,
structure.
castle.
Yeah, here I was out. But I figured is this where I took the queen?
Yeah, you traded queens. Yep.
Yeah.
Traded everything in 95, yeah.
And then I was very confident right here because I play, maybe I could be saying this on stream, my favorite opening is Power Con.
Oh, sure.
And I get this all the time. So I'm usually, and I usually watch out for it in games as well, but clearly this was an exception.
I mean, yeah, it's not that horrible.
Yeah.
It's like they're all
It's
together.
really hard to break. It's like
Yeah.
the personal experience is white, so I'm just like not too worried about it. Like I'm not gonna get back recognition. Right? So,
Right.
and then with your H3 move.
Oh, sorry, you probably can't see the board. We're on after H.
I can see it a little bit, but okay, yeah.
Are you
Yeah. What was H3? Because I was looking at her bringing in the bishop to E5.
Yeah, I thought even
And-
here.
Yeah. My main concern was her terrorizing with the bishops on my rooks. So
Yeah, how is H3?
It's fine.
H3 I think was fine. The computer liked H4 actually, and it liked bishop D3 and bishop to E2. So, I mean, I think part of the problem with bishop to B5 or A6 is it can get kind of trapped after something like C4. So, at least in some variations, it seems like maybe it gets trapped.
yeah, I was looking at like bishop B5 and like supporting with A4.
Yeah, I figured this was the Western, so we like sure I don't get my legs for bishop out, but at least first were
Yeah, and then like, 'cause I was like, well, now I've got complete control of light squares and pawns, dark squares, bishop's still there, and my knight can just hop around whenever. So,
Yeah, it was kind of hard to find a good square for it though. Like e4 was nice, yeah, but it got a little awkward in this position. Like it can't really go anywhere, and
back here, just protect the.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then
What do you think of my bishop maneuver?
I was a little bit skeptical at first. I felt like knight c5 sort of justified what you did. I think I don't. Did you think about f3 here? F3 is apparently the best move.
Yes. I did think about that.
Yeah,
But I
because
figured he wanted to anyway. So like, why would I mess up my pawn structure? I guess it's not
be
super
able to
messed
break
up.
into mine.
I think the point is to eventually play e4.
Yeah,
Oh.
I was
You know,
thinking that you're
this
gonna
pawn's
do
a little
that.
bit weak at some point.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
There's also like when the knight moves away, you can go king d2, put the king on c2, and then you can break. So yeah, so f3 was the best move, but yeah.
Okay.
How was A5? Because I was very skeptical if it actually was good. But I feel like it was the only thing I had to like go for a win. So
Yeah, a5 was the best move. Yeah.
that-
Yeah, you have to try to do something on the queen side, right? Provoke some sort of weakness. And then yeah, b3 was also the best response because you're not really afraid of this situation. It looks maybe bad, but the pawns aren't so easy to actually win for black. And it's still like a slight edge for black, but you don't have to worry about like a backwards b pawn that you have to protect forever. So
Yeah, then I have no idea if that move is good or bad. I'm gonna be honest. Like,
which move?
I want rook d8, the next move. Rook f to d8.
No, it wasn't good.
Okay.
Yeah.
I had no idea. So
Yeah, you had to take on b3 because what Kamryn should have done here was take on c4. Believe it or not, it might seem counterintuitive, but there's not really an invasion on the d file. And what's more important is white can play rook b1 and invade on the b file. That was gonna be awkward for your bishop, which is apparently the issue.
Because I went rook b1 first, right?
Yeah, and the problem with this move order is it gave him a chance to change his mind and then take you.
yeah. Because now it actually looks good to me. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very quickly.
I mean,
I was like, what?
Yeah, it's not bad. It's not bad.
I would say I felt like this was like my only way of like because I'm still like I still wanted to push for a win just because like I already had like a couple games that I lost and I shouldn't have. So I was like, this seems like the only chance.
All right, Marcel, are you ready for the bad news?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, you missed. I saw you struggling in the camera, but yeah, when this tactic doesn't really work for Kamryn at all. This rook takes b6. Yeah, unfortunately.
Oh, really?
Yeah, no, it's just a blunder. Yeah.
Oh my, what?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, the point is after knight takes b6, you go rook a1 check. And after bishop d1, you move your rook somewhere.
I looked at this and I thought I wasn't. The board has right?
Well, here's what I think both of you missed. Rook b8, and after the bishop moves out of the way, not rook b1, but rook takes d1. And then the skewer at the end.
Oh.
Yeah, that's what I missed.
Yeah. Yeah, that was the win.
I
got to here and I just kept seeing like it's rook and two bishops versus two rooks, and then I'd swap off the rooks and it'd be two bishops versus rook, and I was like, I'm not gonna play that. So I knew I was missing something. I knew it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, that was the everything was fine. Kamryn, I think if you had just played king d2 in this position, was all you
I
needed
already
to
sacrificed a piece of the game one, so it evens out.
do. Yeah. After that, it was back to even though. Like this position is not over. It looks maybe better for black, but like easier to play. But the real blunder was rook b2.
Yeah. I was so mad at myself for missing c7. I wasn't even thinking. And then after I played rook b2, I was like, wait, she can play b3, and I've just given her a pawn to target.
Yeah. After this, there's really not anything you can do.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, Kamryn, you could actually have made your life a little bit simpler, perhaps, if you just went for this pawn right away, something like this.
See, I saw that and I thought she was gonna go for it. I'm not gonna lie.
I didn't even think about that. I thought I had to stop the pawn from stopping me, but wait, yeah, you're actually totally right.
Yeah, I think you can just go take the pawn, basically.
Yeah, I
That's too bad, isn't it? Okay. Why did I?
Oh, because you know what the point is? The point is if he tries to play f5, then you go king f4 and you just get in this way instead.
Yep.
Oh, because
then you get in on the dark squares.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're talking about your position, right?
So
F4 was bad.
No,
Or it was-
f4 is still winning. It's all at this point. It's all winning. Like you almost can't even go wrong. Yeah.
I couldn't figure it out. If it was a draw or not at some points. So
I was hoping like there'd be something that would pop up that I could like get a skew out of, but I was like, nah, I don't see anything.
Yeah, and the problem is
it's just it turned into
Too many weaknesses.
this.
And
Yeah,
the pawn.
and this would have been interesting, but it's just going to be zugzwang when the white king invades like this.
Yeah.
There wasn't anything you could do. Yeah.
Because eventually you're just gonna get here and I'm gonna have to move away.
yeah, that's kind of so I was gonna leave the tension there, but I was like, why make my life harder?
I mean,
What
like,
do I
that doesn't
thinking?
like stop
Just
us very
take the pawn.
I know, but how else am I
Thing.
gonna stop?
What a game.
I can't believe I missed that. Like, because I calculated all the way there and I just didn't look at the. Yeah.
Yeah. You probably. I imagine you looked at like doubling the rooks on the first rank, but not the rook taking the bishop first.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I looked at.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, I would have been devastated.
Yeah, I was thinking that's like the one way that you can miss it is if you're too focused on the other move, perhaps. But yeah, it was a little tricky.
So let's learn, I guess. Well,
Well, it was an exciting game. I think people enjoyed watching. I enjoyed watching. So, thank you. Yeah.
it was another long one. I'm sorry. These evening
okay.
ones keep going. Like, I don't do them games.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah.
That was my last
Well,
one.
thanks, Ian.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for joining.
No problem.
Appreciate it.
Oh, no.
Yep.
Guys, we'll be back tomorrow. Nate joined tonight, correct?
That's my last
Yeah,
one.
Nate joined for a little bit, yeah, but he was kind of tired, so he didn't stay for too long. He checked in right before all the action, and then he left, and he missed all the exciting parts.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So for the rest of the weekend, we'll have Ian and we'll have Omar. I can't talk on the commentary. And I hope you guys have been enjoying. I have heard from people that they have been. So, of course, we appreciate you staying up late. And we will see you tomorrow.
Yep. Sounds great. Okay. Good luck to both of you in the next rounds.
Thanks.
And thanks everybody for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow.
Do you need anything else, Ian, or should I hang up?
I think we're good. Thank you.
All right. See you later. Bye.